Good morning and welcome here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks so much for joining us. 6 o'clock now here on the East Coast, 3 o'clock over on the West Coast. Let's get out to a number of the live shots that we do have for you this morning, as we like to take a live look out at a number of the cameras that we do have really across the country as we start the morning. Beautiful shot live out over in New York City this morning. As we get into our daily coverage there, we'll go ahead and take a live look over in the Phoenix, Arizona area. President Biden will be there, of course, later tonight, also there to honor John McCain, as well as giving a campaign speech. We'll also take a live look out in Auburn, Alabama there. You can catch a little bit of the stadium over there this morning as we are all waking up. You can also see that beautiful shot of the sun right over there in the right hand corner. Sun, I mean moon there, as it's just popping out throughout the cloud coverage there. Just a neat shot, as we do have all these different cameras we can show you here in the U.S. and all over the world. Live look out at the U.S. Capitol today, as it is going to be a busy day on Capitol Hill as we start to get into some of our top stories of the day here on Live Now from Fox. We know that U.S. President Joe Biden, well, he's going to be not in the hot seat, but the focus of attention today during a hearing on Capitol Hill. Republicans have insisted for months that they have grounds to launch an impeachment proceedings against President Joe Biden. Later this morning, they'll begin formally making their case in the public and their skeptical colleagues in the Senate. The chairman of Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means will hold opening hearings of that impeachment inquiry by reviewing the constitutional and legal questions surrounding their investigation of Biden and what they say are links to his son, Hunter's overseas businesses. Of course, last night, if you didn't miss it, if you caught it, it was very electric, that GOP debate over in Simi Valley, California. Rebecca Castor has the latest from the 7 people on stage.
Fiery moments during the second Republican presidential debate in California. 7 Republican presidential hopefuls gathering at Ronald Reagan's Presidential Library in Simi Valley to address some of the issues most pressing to Americans.
Joe Biden should not be on the picket line. He should be on the southern border, working to close our southern border.
We can't be successful as a country if people aren't even safe to live in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Much of the focus, however, remained on the economy, President Joe Biden, and the ongoing spending fight in Washington.
Bidenomics has failed. Wages are not keeping up with inflation.
In center stage, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who was flanked by former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. Both candidates worked hard to keep up the momentum they got from the last debate.
Honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say.
I think we would be better served as a Republican Party if we're not sitting here hurling personal insults.
While others looked for a breakout moment to help close the gap with the frontrunner, former President Trump, who skipped the debate in favor of a campaign event in Michigan.
You're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record.
Candidates will now focus on qualifying for the third debate taking place in November in Miami. In Simi Valley, California, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
And also happening today, later on Capitol Hill, as we go ahead and take another live look out at the U.S. Capitol this morning. We do know that officials from the Hawaiian Electric Company, Hawaii's top public utility, officials say that their president of Hawaiian Electric is expected to testify this morning on Capitol Hill during a hearing about the role of the electric grid and how it played the role in that deadly fire over in Maui last month. Members of a U.S. House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee are expected to question the utility officials about how the U.S. deadliest wildfire in more than a century began and whether the electrical grid in Lahaina was safe and properly maintained. The fire killed at least 97 people and destroyed more than 2,000 buildings, mostly homes. It erupted shortly after 6:30 in the morning on August 8th when strong winds appeared to cause a Hawaiian electric power line to fall, igniting dry brush and grass near a large subdivision. So that hearing expected to take place at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be popping in and out of that. We also have, of course, that Biden impeachment inquiry proceedings, those kicking off also this morning here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be working to pop in and out of those events as we can bring them to you. All right, and it's very possible that even more auto workers could go on strike. This as union officials are not happy with the progress or lack of progress, they say, in the union negotiation fight with the big three auto companies. Right now, I want to turn to Madeline Rivera with the latest on that.
United Auto Workers members could drive up their strike. The union is planning to announce new strike locations at more plants belonging to General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis if negotiations don't improve.
We're prepared to be out here as long as it takes.
UAW wants 40% pay raises over 4 years, along with other benefits. The automakers have come in closer to 20%.
I don't know how they come together right now.
With no signs of abating, the strike has even grabbed the attention of former President Trump. He's skipping the second Republican primary debate in California to speak instead with union members in the battleground state of Michigan. Trump is looking to drive a wedge between union members and President Biden, who just the day before joined the UAW picket line.
You can be loyal to American labor, or you can be loyal to the environmental lunatics, but you can't really be loyal to both. It's one or the other.
While Trump supporters are standing by him,
The Democrats have been led astray about our economy.
Other union members say they're not sold on his efforts to court blue-collar voters.
I believe that President Trump has an agenda, and Joe Biden has it in his heart.
UAW's leader is giving automakers until Friday to make serious progress in negotiations. He's scheduled to make an announcement on Facebook Live that day. In Washington, Madeline Rivera, Fox News.
Meanwhile, the U.S. remains just 3 days away from a potential government shutdown. That, if House Republicans can't get it together with House Democrats and Democrats all across Congress over the next 3 days. October 1st is when the government would begin to shut down if lawmakers cannot reach a deal. Live look now at the Capitol as we head out to a quick commercial break here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. All right, welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks for joining us now at 6:11 on the East Coast, 3:11 over on the West Coast. We want to now turn out to Philadelphia, where the city has experienced looting for a second night in the row. There's big reasons for it as well. I want to turn now over to Marcus Espinoza on the ground live in Philadelphia for us from Fox 29 with the very latest. Good morning, Marcus.
Good morning, Giacomo. Yeah, I'm in Northeast Philadelphia off a major road, State Road, and that's about as specific as we're going to get here for obvious reasons you're going to see here. But behind me is one of the locations that was looted overnight here, and you're seeing leftovers from a sneaker tractor trailer inventory truck. These are brand new sneakers. Most of these boxes are several $100s, if not thousands of dollars a piece, of brand new Air Forces and Air Maxes and Nike sneakers, kids sneakers, anything you could really think of here sneaker wise. There's also clothing as well. So it appears that these looters showed up here, took what they could, and then took off. So, but you know, here's the question, right, is how did they know? It certainly appears that someone had knowledge of where to go, what truck to hit, and what they'd find inside of it after they opened it up and busted off the locks. One of the busted locks is underneath the trailer here, actually, and then could probably only take a fraction of what's inside. They obviously left all of this inventory here, and they either got spooked away by police, security alarm, security surveillance video. Somebody might have spooked them away, or they just simply filled up their vehicle, took what they could, and then took off from there. But we're going to pull up video of another location because this is not the only spot that was hit in Philadelphia tonight. As you mentioned this is now the second night of looting, and yesterday's popular spot were liquor stores. And you're taking a look at another one here. This is a state liquor store over on Adams Avenue, Fine Wine and Good Spirits liquor store, just completely trashed, completely demolished. Liquor bottles were dropped and smashed outside of the store when police arrived, and looters were caught in the act and then dropped the bottles and then fled from there. And yesterday, the Fine Wine and Good Spirits liquor store announced that they were closing all of their stores in Philadelphia and then one in Montgomery County out of the interest of employee safety because of these break-ins yesterday. More than a dozen stores were hit last night, and then now this one overnight on Adams. And then just in general there was also another sneaker store. We don't have video of that, but another sneaker store was attempted to be hit. A beauty salon was also hit overnight that just had a grand opening. So just a sporadic night of break-ins and looting here. And this is a really interesting scene here because you got, I would imagine, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of inventory inside this truck. And the thieves took as much as they could, and then they took off.
Wow, what a scene there over in Philadelphia. Now, Marcus, what sparked all of this this looting events over the last couple of days?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we take a look at kind of more of this chaos left over here, this is really having to do with a Philadelphia police involved shooting that happened earlier in the summer here. And an officer was being charged for being charged with murder of a suspect inside of a car. Now, earlier this week, a judge dropped all charges against that former police officer, Mark Dial. He was accused of shooting and killing Eddie Irizarry on an August 14th traffic stop. So basically, after that was announced a couple of days ago, this has been a response to it. There have been peaceful protests to that decision to drop all the charges against that officer, but then there's opportunists who took advantage of that moment and decided to cause destruction, break into an Apple store yesterday in Philadelphia, the liquor stores as mentioned, and then today it's continued breaking into several spots, including this tractor trailer here.
Yeah, and we saw some of that video yesterday as well from that iPhone, from that Apple store, as people were just ripping iPhones off the test shelves there. Pretty dramatic video there. The police response, what's it been?
It's been swift, it's been wide. You got a lot of detectives and police officers on 12-hour shifts as well. You know, so they're tired, they're exhausted, they're at wit's end, and they're dealing with the regular homicide issues as well in Philadelphia. So just a lot on the plate right now of the Philadelphia Police Department, certainly.
All right, Marcus Espinoza over there in Philadelphia from that shocking scene as we continue to follow the latest on that looting over there in the city. Marcus Espinoza with Fox 29 Philadelphia. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, folks, the time now 6:16 here on the East Coast, and that makes it 3:16 over on the West Coast. We did hear from Philadelphia officials just yesterday on this looting. I want to play out just some of the audio from that initial incident yesterday.
Some updates on some of the incidents that occurred tonight. So let me first start by saying there was a protest earlier this evening, and the events that we have seen tonight have nothing to do with the protest. The protest ended somewhere around 7:30. It was a peaceful protest around City Hall area, in which we had a number of bike officers and police officers respond to that, and again, that protest ended very peacefully somewhere around 7:30 or so. But very shortly after, approaching the 8 o'clock hour, we began to get numerous 911 calls, and some of our officers started to see large groups of juveniles congregating and making their way through Center City area. Somewhere around 8 o'clock, we started to get multiple calls of certain businesses starting to essentially have their stores broken into or stores ransacked, where we had a number of looting incidents occur. As a result of that, our officers began to respond to a number of those stores, began to make some apprehensions, which a number of folks were arrested, began to try to disperse those crowds of juveniles and young adults. We're told at one point that crowd got as large as maybe 100 or so that were just making their way through Center City area. Our officers responded to that area and began to, again, disperse them, moving them out. What we started to see as the night went on were a couple calls throughout the city of looting incidents, some going into East Division along Aramingo Avenue and some other spots throughout the city. And so we responded through the course of the night. Again, at this point in time, we know somewhere around 15 to 20 arrests have taken place thus far. At least 2 firearms have been recovered during some arrests. Don't know if they're all connected to this or not, but this investigation is ongoing. We have a number of investigators that are responding to these incidents, along with our officers, obviously recovering video, and it's going to be work done to make additional apprehensions as it relates to the activity that we've seen tonight. Again, I just wanted to reiterate that this had nothing to do with the protest. What we had tonight was a bunch of criminal opportunists take advantage of a situation and make an attempt to destroy our city. And so, and again, it's not going to be tolerated. We made arrests, and we will continue to make arrests until we have all of the individuals, or a number of the individuals that have been responsible for what we've seen tonight, in custody.
Did anything change with coverage between 7:30 and 8 that made it so more groups started coming out once the protest ended and the tone switched?
No, and so we had coverage as a result of just a precaution, knowing that there was the potential for some type of response as a result of the decision that was made earlier today. And so we are prepared for that, knowing that there would be a response. Like I said, the protest ended around 7:30, so quite naturally, as a result of that, we started to move our personnel out of that particular area. Again, juveniles congregating in Center City is not, a new thing, but when we started to see that, our officers responded. We had enough officers within the area to quickly respond to those juveniles that we started to see. As the time went on, that crowd got a little larger, and so again, trying to ascertain where they came from. That's all a part of the investigation to determine that, but they just it wasn't all together at one point in time. They all started to come from what we know at this point, probably different parts of the city, by different methods, but ultimately we had a number of officers that were quickly able to be dispersed to that and respond to those incidents.
What about it started happening in Aramingo, 52nd Street, Lehigh Avenue? That was, these folks couldn't get up there, so how did people just hearing that stuff was going on in Center City and started going?
I believe that's exactly what you started to see throughout the city. We were able to link some things on social media and see that there were some again, chatter about certain locations. And as a result, we had taken the precaution of having officers more so on post at some of those places throughout the city where we know we've had incidents before. And so we were prepared in that regard. But once you start to see a number of folks flooding into those areas, quite naturally we have to, readjust in terms of sending additional officers there to be able to disperse those crowds. But we had officers essentially assigned to all of those locations throughout the city. But we saw that chatter, started to respond. But again, we also know that at this point we're investigating that there is possibly a caravan of a number of different vehicles that were going from location to location. Right now we have a couple of those individuals in custody, and so we're going to continue to work to see how that caravan is connected. But that's early information that we have as of now, that they were going from location to location. So it's very possible that we had a group that was just making their way through the city. But quite naturally, you have followers that people are going to see this and start to come out to it and think that they can have an opportunity to get something, as well.
That caravan that you're talking about, was that the chase that ended in the area of like Rising Sun and Adams over there?
That's correct. In terms of, so that may be one part that's connected to that. But again, our men and women tonight were responding to a lot of these locations, and they were doing so, with. They were doing so with the firm intention of making apprehensions. And so, again, we were responding quickly. Many of them were already in the area, again, trying to minimize the damage that was being done at these locations based upon what we had tonight.
Yeah, you said you were...
Okay, John, I don't know if you and two more can answer this. This was like a bam-bam thing today, but it wasn't planned days in advance. All the other peaceful protests in Kenzie were peaceful, but this decision came out, and I was just wondering, did you give the stores any notice? Because a lot of them were still open, and I didn't know if the city even had time to say, hey, just be on guard, maybe close early. I didn't know if you put out...
Yeah, I think we were working with our Commerce Department as soon as we heard the decision from the courts that came out, and of course police and our partners like OEM began planning to monitor social media to see if we saw any protests pop up or civil unrest. I just want to reiterate what the commissioner said. This absolutely had nothing to do with the peaceful protests that we saw at City Hall and a caravan a little bit around Center City. I believe the words the commissioner used was criminal opportunists. And that's what it was. That's what we saw. That's what I personally saw with my own eyes riding around the city tonight. Folks who, for whatever reason, just felt as though they could take advantage of the situation and loot and rob stores. And, I think the commissioner talked about the investigation that's going on, the video we'll pull. I just hope that we are successful in trying to arrest all of these folks. I think we could probably do a better job of getting the word out to the business community. Certainly we've had folks from our Commerce Department monitoring our OEM sort of communications all night and kind of giving them update by update everything that was going on in real time, communicating with some of the stores that was damaged, whether or not they knew their areas were damaged, and trying to get folks to come onto the site to sort of repair it in security facilities. But this is just unfortunate. I mean, it's disrespectful to their Zeri family and what they're going through right now. And they were at the protests earlier. They've certainly communicated in all of their social media and media appearances about wanting answers, wanting justice, but also wanting it to be peaceful. And these criminal opportunists just took advantage of us tonight.
You had mentioned that you had alerted some businesses and you were going to areas that there was looting before. Is there a specific type of store that these opportunists were going at?
And so, well, obviously places like clothing stores, high-end stores, sneaker stores, even some of the wine and spirit stores. We've seen a couple pharmacies targeted, and so that seemed to be what they could possibly get their hands on.
And is everything contained at this point, or are there any hotspots still out there?
I mean, for the most part, I think we have it contained. There are still probably some pop-ups that we're still responding to some 911 calls. And again, we may not even, get some calls until tomorrow as businesses return for opening. We may get additional calls at locations that we may not have been aware of tonight. So this process will be ongoing for a few days. It's not going to just end tonight. And again, that investigative process is going to continue as we look for, video or whatever we can possibly get to make apprehensions. And we also call on the public, in terms of if you see or know someone that may have been out there involved in this activity tonight, let us know. I mean, it's disgusting, to be very honest, right? And to see what our city went through in 2020, and to have some individuals try to recreate that same type of energy tonight is disgusting. And again, at the end of the day, we're going to press on until we're able to get those folks in custody, because again, it has no space in the city, and there are too many people that worked hard in the business community, too many people throughout communities in this city that don't deserve that type of behavior. And so we're calling on people that if you know that there are individuals on your block that may have engaged in this, that are trying to either sell merchandise, whatever you may know, 686 tips. All right, give us that information so that we can make those apprehensions and get those people in custody. Because again, our city can't afford this type of nonsense.
Any rough estimate at this point how many businesses were hit or have been affected?
I don't know that just yet. I mean, hopefully tomorrow we'll have a better count of how many businesses were affected by, again, these individuals tonight.
Don't want to get in the middle of anything 4 days into the job, but the last time in 2020, a lot of the people that were arrested given appearance tickets, and then the charges were dropped. So nothing, no consequences. So a lot of the police that were out there arresting people said no consequences came, and these people were just let go, charges dropped. Are you fearing that would happen again, and then these people just have no consequences when this comes up and they get caught?
So, well, as far as our women and men go, they're instructed to make the arrest, and we're not going to back down from that. You see criminal activity, we know that there's criminal behavior. We are going to affect the arrest.
You go back.
We are going to affect the arrest, and again, we will work with the prosecutors here in terms of to move that process forward. But the bottom line is we're going to lock them up in terms of it. We know that there are folks that have been involved in this activity. Our folks have been instructed to make the arrests where warranted. As investigations continue to lead us, we will make additional arrests and let that play itself out.
And as you pointed out here, these weren't protesters, these were criminals.
These were not protesters, these were criminals. These were people that took advantage of an opportunity, and again, looking to destroy our city. And I say that because everybody in this city should be angry. Everybody that goes to these businesses should be angry. Everybody that lives in various communities throughout this city that have impacted by this behavior in 2020 should be angry about what they observed tonight and what they're seeing from you all reporting this tonight, because again, it's disgusting and it has no place in this city. And again, we all need to work together to nip it as quickly as we can.
While this whole event was going on, were anyone in the businesses or any police hurt in this whole thing?
At this point in time, we know at least one police vehicle was damaged, but no injuries reported thus far. Again, we'll go through that, in terms of the officers that were out there tonight and make sure that we don't have any injuries. We'll get that information and update for that by morning.
Any of the other events going on around the city, particularly like any shootings and stuff like that was not tied to what was going on here in the city?
Nothing that indicates that.
All right, you have been listening in live, raw, and unfiltered over in Philadelphia from that press conference just yesterday following the widespread looting over in that downtown area. We're headed to a quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Check, 1, 2, mic check, mic check.
All right, welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks so much for joining us here at 6:32 now on the East Coast, 3:32 over on the West Coast. We do want to talk a little bit about Italian politics this morning, as we did hear a little bit more from the Italian Prime Minister saying she's now astonished over a recent move in German immigration policy. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni wrote a letter to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz saying, again, she learned with astonishment of a German government initiative to finance migrant charity groups operating in the Mediterranean. Both Italy and Germany remain kind of at the center of Europe's immigration and refugee crisis. So right now we want to go ahead and turn over to Professor Leila Simona Talani. She is a professor at King's College in London, and she heads the Center of Italian Politics. Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us from across the pond to discuss this topic.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, first off, let's jump right into it. Talk to me, first off, put in context the issue of immigration for Italy and Germany, respectively.
Yes, so basically, I mean, Italy, as you know, is one of the main receiving countries of the European Union of Migration. And recently, I mean, this has been going on for many years. It's not really something that happened now. But recently, there has been an upsurge in the number of migrants that are landing, particularly by sea. And so we're talking about thousands of migrants landing by sea in the island of Lampedusa, which is a little bit more than it used to happen before. As I said, it's not a new phenomenon. It's just been in the last 6 months more accentuated than before.
Germany has this issue as well, of course, a little bit different routes. Italy obviously being faced with problems from immigration, illegal immigration specifically, almost doubling since this time last year, according to some of the latest numbers from the IRC. That's the International Rescue Committee. We pulled that from Italy, facing a lot of migration from Egypt, Tunisia, of course, those countries in North Africa, and then Germany facing a lot of migration and also handling the refugee crisis from Ukraine, from Syria.
Yeah, no, so what happens is basically many migrants that because there are limited rights for legal migration into the European Union, refugees and migrants, they all enter illegally, and they mostly enter through Italy, as I said before. But many of them don't really want to remain in Italy. What they want to do is to go to Germany or to France, and mostly to Germany and other countries, Austria and France as well. And so what happens is not precisely that the Germany only takes refugees from Syria and from Ukraine, but they also had a lot of migrants that cross Italy and that cross the border and go to Germany. This is something that has always irritated a lot the German government, although it must be said that they usually are able to accommodate many of those, let's call them irregular migrants, but in many cases they're also refugees because there is no legal right to entry into the European Union for refugees. They first have to cross the border with the EU country and then they can ask for the asylum-seeking status. That does not apply to Ukraine, however, to Ukrainians, because Ukrainians have the right to enter the European Union without having to claim for the asylum-seeking status. And so what has been going on has been going on really for a long period. I mean, for very many years. Now what we have is like a recrudescence of the phenomenon because there are more migrants. But this is a dynamic which is really long-standing.
What then is the issue with the Italian policy compared to now the German policy, and why would Germany be then funding these groups in the Mediterranean, and why would the Italians have a problem with it?
So thank you for the question. This is a really important one. What's been going on is that the Italian government with Miss Meloni, she changed the regulation for migration, and in particular she changed the regulation related to NGOs which were operating in the Mediterranean for rescue operations. So as I said, this has been going on for a long time, but there was a problem, or at least there was the belief that basically NGOs rescuing migrants at sea would represent a pull factor for irregular migration. So she decided to make it illegal for NGOs to effect more than a rescue operation at a time. So multiple rescue operations were made illegal. That means that NGOs, or better ships from NGOs, like Open Arms or other SOS Humanity, which is actually the German one, they can only make a single operation at a time. That, however, did not really limit the number of migrants, because the number of migrants has actually doubled, as you said. So it must be said that possibly that was not the reason why migrants would be attracted to Italy. There must be other reasons. However, there's also another rule that was introduced, is that if NGOs breached this rule, basically they had to pay 20,000 euros each time. So the fact that Germany has always been financing their own NGOs, not only rescue NGOs, so not only NGOs that were rescuing migrants at sea, they have always been financing NGOs of all kinds, in particular humanitarian ones. But in this case, they decided to refinance one in particular of those NGOs, which is called SOS Humanity, with an amount of, I think it was 400,000 euros, in a way making it possible for this NGO to pay the fines which are related to multiple operations at sea. And it's not that this has been said, but that would allow them to do it. The reason why they do it is because they've always been supporting humanitarian NGOs. And in a way, I have to be honest, that this is actually a favor that they're doing to the Italian government, because if you have migrants at sea which need rescuing, someone has to do it. It's against international law not to rescue migrants at sea. And the fact that basically the German government is paying for it is good news for Italy, because we don't have to pay. So it's really weird that we're very upset about this, to be honest.
Is this something that you would expect from the hard right parliament and hard right leader Giorgia Meloni over there in Italy, this type of response?
Honestly, I mean, I think the stricter policies on NGOs, yes, I would have expected it, and in fact they did it. This diplomatic road with Germany is a bit weird. It's amongst a number of diplomatic roads with other EU countries which are happening. We have one with France at the same time, because as I said, most migrants tendentially cross Italy and they want to go somewhere else, either to France or to Germany. So France has closed the border in Ventimiglia with Italy, which means that they are putting much stricter controls. So we tendentially have diplomatic rows on migration with other EU countries every month. So this is just one of them. And to be honest, I think it's going to be resolved pretty quickly, this one.
And we know, of course, later today, in just the next couple of hours, both the German and the Italian foreign ministers are expected to be meeting in Berlin, where we're expected to hear from them later today. We'll certainly be looking forward to whatever comes out of that conversation. What do you expect, if anything, from that on this issue?
I think it will go into nothing. I mean, that will be nothing will happen out of it. I think that Germany has a right to found their own NGOs. And plus, I think Germany is pretty irritated by the way we handle migration in Italy, in particular, the fact that many migrants cross and ask for asylum seeking status in Germany. And that happens because there is a tendency, and also sometimes it happens very often, that according to it's a bit complicated, but basically we should take fingerprints of all the migrants that enter irregularly the Italian border. And this does not really happen every time. So they have the possibility to cross the border and ask for asylum seeking status in other countries like France and Germany. And this is something that really irritates Germany. So I don't think we have a huge bargaining power on those issues. And as I said, also, this is in favor of us because they're paying the bills of rescuing migrants through the NGOs or the bills of the fining of the NGOs. So I think nothing will really happen. It will be resolved easily.
And meanwhile, we also know this morning a number of EU foreign ministers met in Brussels as they're discussing updated EU asylum legislation. I was just wondering what you can tell us about that, and in terms of the overall issue across Europe, which has accepted, more than 2 million migrants since 2015, how that will change, how that may impact the rest of those 27 member states.
So, I mean, the Dublin Convention is precisely the asylum-seeking legislation that exists in Europe. It's called the Dublin Regulation now. It became a regulation in 2003, and that is what I was referring to before, that refugees or asylum seekers have the right to ask for asylum-seeking status in the first country they enter into the European Union. But to be sure that this happens, there is a system which is called Eurodac, and they are taken fingerprints in the entry country, and if they don't ask for the asylum seeking in the entry country, they can be sent back. Because the entry countries are all in the south, and there's mostly Italy and also Greece, and to a limited extent Spain as well, we have the majority of the asylum seekers, which is also irregular migrants, arrive in Italy. This is no good for the Southern European countries. So they've always been against the asylum law, which they actually hope to be changed. On the other hand, however, because the Southern European countries, and especially Italy, don't take fingerprints, the asylum seeking directive or regulation, is not applied to a large extent. And this is what irritates the Northern European countries. So here there is a contrast of interests. And they are all very much not, let's say, they are not very happy about the legislation as it is at the moment. This is, however, where the only alternative is to have a system of basically replacing the asylum seekers on the basis of the will and the voluntary, the decision of other member states to take asylum seekers coming to Italy or to Spain or to Greece. And this is also very difficult to obtain. So on one hand, no one is happy with the current legislation. On the other hand, it's really difficult to find some form of agreement between the entry countries and the countries who actually receive the most of the migrants. The majority of migrants still now go to Germany. So Germany is the one which is more interested by this phenomenon. And this is the one which could be like in favor of changing the legislation as it is. It's been very difficult to change it. And I'm not sure that this meeting we have today is going to resolve the problem.
Certainly a very important topic, and one that really continues both in the U.S. and across the sea over in Europe, both dealing with very similar but also very different migration policies. Professor Leila Simona Talani over at King's College of London, we appreciate you joining the show. Anything I didn't ask? Anything you'd like to add?
No, that's fine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We sure do appreciate it. Thanks so much. Buongiorno and grazie. Ciao.
Arrivederci.
Okay, folks, the time now, 6:45 here on the East Coast, 3:45 over on the West Coast. We do want to get out to a quick commercial break here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks so much for joining us. It's 6:47 now on the East Coast, 3:47 over on the West Coast. We do like to prioritize live events here on Live Now from Fox, so I want to take you out to this one happening now, live, raw, and unfiltered, as the Associated Press is doing a one-on-one interview with Kosovo's interior minister amid renewed tensions between Kosovo and Serbia, coming just a day after that recent shootout, coming after that recent day-long shootout between armed Serbs and Kosovo police that left one officer and 3 gunmen dead. We'll pop up the audio. Listen in live, raw, and unfiltered.
It is based on the analysis of these expert groups that the government of Kosovo will take proper decisions.
Can Kosovo continue dialogue with Serbia in these circumstances?
Well, personally, I don't believe that that is possible. While we are under attack from very same who are supposed to negotiate and discuss the solutions which would bring a situation that we all as a region integrate into EU. Aleksandar Vučić, its government, their institutions, they showed hostile intents that they have toward Kosovo. They're not hiding it. Before it was more political and guerrilla sort of war against institutions of Kosovo, or people that were loyal to institutions of Kosovo. Now it's open. Now it's open. It's, of course, it is a hybrid war, but now more with terrorist acts, which are more visible, more dangerous than other sorts of attacks.
Why do you think this changed from harsh rhetoric now to acting directly with armed groups?
Well, I think Vučić was left without arguments concerning future implementation of agreements which were reached in Brussels and Ohrid. So the intention of Serbia was to change a reality on the ground, to bring more tensions, more deaths, to bring Kosovo authorities and international community before the situation that will lean in front of their ultimatums. This is not new for Serbia. This is what they did in Bosnia. Now we are witnessing what kind of functional state Bosnia is, precisely because of destructive influence of Serbia and Republika Srpska in it. And they would like to repeat this in Kosovo.
Serbian president yesterday night said that the intention wasn't to kill the policeman, and that he wants facts, or he wants to be told what happened exactly. But he also told that the Kosovo Albanian police has nothing to do there, that there should be the Serbian police.
Well, how does he know what was the intention of the group? If the intention of these terrorists were not to kill police officers, why they were put in the ambush? There was no initial conflict between terrorists and police. They were executed while approaching the barricade. So, again, this is one more evidence that he was involved and he's lying. Sorry to use this language, but everybody in the region knows that Vučić is a notorious liar. Now, what we have to do is really to know the whole truth in terms of every step, every move to identify properly and to know the whole truth, who was involved, and to bring them before justice. I appeal to Serbia to bring the wounded and the terrorists who are in Serbia, all of them, to hand them over to Kosovo authorities so they face the justice, and institutions of Kosovo uncover all the circumstances and of course punishes these terrorists. Concerning what our police is doing there, well, Kosovo is independent, sovereign country with one police, with one hierarchy within the police, and there's no restriction, just like in any other normal country, for police to be in every inch of its territory. More than 500 police officers, because of the pressure of Belgrade, police officers that came from Serbian community resigned with the purpose of imploding the whole system.
You've been listening in live, raw, and unfiltered as the Interior Minister over there in Kosovo has renewed concern about tensions with Serbia after a deadly shootout. We'll come back to this in just a couple minutes, but first, a quick commercial break. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks so much for joining us. Time now 6:57 here on the East Coast. You are listening in live, raw, and unfiltered to this interview with the Associated Press, speaking with the Interior Minister of Kosovo after renewed tensions and concern about renewed tensions between Kosovo and Serbia following a deadly shooting. Let's pop up the audio and listen in.
This tells us that there were equipment for a couple of hundred people, together with the logistics. Motor saws, axes, shovels for barricades, food, medicines, barrels to carry the wounded. So it was equipment and weapons for whole battalion.
Today you increased the number of the special forces in the north of Kosovo. Is this danger over?
No, the danger is not over. Of course, the operation continues in terms of investigation. Now we don't have clashes, but we have information that the training of these terrorists continues in Serbia. We estimate that there are still people within Kosovo who were part of this group. So we're far from a situation that this insurgency is over. But yes, the situation is much calmer. In village of Banjska, normal life is starting. People are going to work, people are getting supplies, everything. And I suppose that, or I believe, to be more precise, with full cooperation with KFOR and the ULEX, with professional behavior of Kosovo police, things will get normalized in the future.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, you have been listening in live, raw, and unfiltered. As that interview went underway, it did seem like that shot just kind of popped out on us. That happens sometimes. This is live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox. But we've got a lot more news to get to today. So let's go ahead and pop up this shot here. Let's see, we've got the U.S. Capitol. That's where we're trying to go right now. Right there, U.S. Capitol today. A lot of big talkers coming out of that as House leaders expected to begin the hearings on the Biden impeachment inquiry. We're also expected to learn more from Hawaiian electric utility officials about those deadly fires over in Maui. And then, of course, last night we had that electric debate over in California in Simi Valley, where 7 contenders for the presidential race in 2024 went head-to-head. Let's go ahead and listen in live, raw and unfiltered now to this conversation right after the debate with Andrew Kraft breaking this down.
Wrapped up, we're going to dive into some of these key highlights as well. What did you make of it? Because, you know, this was the second chance these candidates had the opportunity to make their case to Republican primary voters and the American people. And you know, having just watched it and seen some of the reaction on social media, it doesn't seem like anyone came out on top. There were no clear breakthrough moments.
No, and Andrew, I think what we saw tonight was, in the case of a lot of these candidates, the 2.0 version. Ramaswamy, the statement that he made about, you know, he's aggressive, he's young, but he's, you know, got energy and he's hungry. And you saw that each candidate had looked at their first debate and you know, went through a process of deciding what worked and what didn't work. DeSantis, to me, this evening looked a lot different. Nikki Haley, I thought, was steady as she was in the first debate. And I thought that that Mike Pence was kind of, in a sense, a little bit of an afterthought. One of the things with him, Andrew, is that as these candidates are attacking, as an example, the trillions of dollars added to the debt by the Trump administration, by extension, Mike Pence is involved with that. And he's trying to distance himself from Donald Trump, but he was vice president. So he's got a tough thing to work with there. You know, a couple of the other people on the stage, okay. I thought Chris Christie looked better tonight.
Okay, so Brian, while we have you with us, we want to just show some of the highlights from the debate that we have kind of picked out for the viewers, you know, in case they watched it on the Fox Business Network or in case they did not. But yet again, there was so many back and forths between Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley, and I just want to play that for some of the viewers. Let's watch this one.
Every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150 million people are on TikTok. That means they can get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails, they can get text messages, they can get all of these things.
This is very important for our party.
Exactly what they're doing.
This is very important for our party, and I'm going to say
you've gone and you've helped China make medicines in China, not America. You're now wanting kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you.
Okay, so Brian, Nikki Haley getting quite personal there, telling Vivek Ramaswamy, every time you speak, I get dumber. It did seem like the knives were out for Nikki Haley. Of course, after the last debate, the first debate there in Milwaukee, she saw somewhat of a bump in the polls and in her fundraising. So was she the one to beat tonight?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Andrew. I think if we wanted to phrase it differently, she was the one that needed to be knocked down peg by these other candidates. And she, I think, comported herself well, one woman on the stage of 7 people. And you could see she's willing to go toe-to-toe with people. I mean, when she told Tim Scott to bring it on, she obviously is there to debate, and she's a policy master. But there are other people on that stage that, you know, are her equal in many of the policy areas and in trying to understand the American people. I thought setting aside all of the yelling at each other and lack of control by the moderators, which isn't their fault, it just becomes kind of a 3-ring circus. I think there were some nuggets that we heard tonight about particularly China, which was not very much a subject in the first debate, but is becoming an increasing subject as we move forward towards the presidential election.
Yeah, of course, these clips courtesy of Fox Business Network. We see right now, this is happening live, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum speaking there in the spin room. I mean, Brian, some of these lower tier candidates, when are they going to stop, or rather start, to really drop out, to coalesce around a second place candidate there? Of course, Trump is in first right now. Is Doug Burgum going to be one of them? I mean, he made and he qualified this debate there. You see him walking on, but did he get much time tonight?
No, and somebody like the governor and Asa Hutchinson and some of these lower tiered candidates, they really should move on for the party, actually, and for the debate that the Republicans want to have. I think Dana Perino pointed out that, you know, there must be a calculation about how you're going to obtain the nomination. We heard her ask that question tonight, kind of sophomoric with the write down the, you know, the guy you want off the island or whatever. But setting that aside, it is true that some of these people are never going to be nominated and really need to take a hard look at it. I would like to see, you know, 3 to 4 people on the stage really going at it.
Yeah, and of course we did hear from Asa Hutchinson. I mean, he didn't make the stage tonight, but he said they're going to kind of reassess around Thanksgiving and maybe later into the fall and early winter. We'll see some of these candidates drop out, coalesce around some of these other higher polling candidates as well. One of those, though, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, he's the one that has really staked his campaign, at least the campaign's message, going after Donald Trump directly, and he did that tonight. Kind of came up with a funny nickname, kind of tongue-in-cheek, going after Trump for not attending the debates at all. I want to play that soundbite here. Let's watch.
Sure.
We've got to bring law and order back to this country. And not just in our cities, but we need the law and order back everywhere. We need law and order back in our suburbs. People are threatened there. We need it in our rural areas. People feel threatened there. And we need it in Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look in that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right. Okay, so Brian, obviously Chris Christie somewhat pleased with himself with that nickname he came up with there. I don't know if it was in the moment or kind of canned and he used it beforehand.
Andrew, it was not in the moment.
Okay, but to Chris Christie's point, I mean, does Donald Trump even need to be at these debates? Obviously, it would be nice, for Republican primary voters to hear from him yet again. We showed his entire remarks there in Detroit tonight, talking about the UAW strike. But he is the elephant not in the room. But does that do any of them a service that he's not there, or a disservice?
Well, to the extent that the people on the stage over the last two debates where Donald Trump wasn't, they got more airtime. I mean, they got more time to talk. But I think all of the kind of the back and forth, the accusations and everything else would be magnified if Donald Trump were there. But the problem with Donald Trump not being there and making excuses for not being there is, as somebody said, I think it was Chris Christie, has said, it's disrespectful. And I think that's the thing here. Now, maybe it won't matter a whit. Maybe the people who are looking for a Republican candidate don't care that Donald Trump is there or not. But, in the history of American politics, we have people getting out there and greeting the voters and debating their opponents. And so him not being there, Donald Trump not being there, again, it strikes me as somewhat disrespectful.
Okay, so I just want to go into the issues. I mean, do you think, I want to contrast, from the first debate to this debate. I was in Milwaukee. I thought the issues really were gotten into in Milwaukee. Was that the case here, or was there just bickering? Did the moderators really have a hard time, reining these candidates in?
Yes. I think, even at a couple of points, the moderators were kind of stepping on each other's sound bites and all of that. There are three of them there. That's tough. I know they wanted Univision to be a part of it for Latino and Hispanic voters. Totally get that. But three is a lot of people, 7 on the stage. So you have 10 people trying to interact. And whether you're going to get a whole lot of content is really the question. Yeah. I thought there was some content tonight. I thought they did talk about some issues they didn't talk about in the first debate. I thought they got much deeper into education, as an example.
Okay, yeah. Because
transgender issues, things like that. Those didn't come up the first debate. They were front and center tonight.
Yeah, because that is a storyline of these debates. How did the moderators do, whether or not order was kept? And we can I want to play this next kind of exchange here, and you can see it kind of devolve. Let's watch, courtesy of Fox Business Network.
We can get things done. If we want to get things done, here's how we get it done in Washington. We must find a way.
Can we please respect the time?
We can get it. Some of us are painted. The bottom line is we need to
Excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting. While I'm speaking.
Well, you said
if I may finish. If I may finish.
You can't be on both sides.
Gentlemen, you'll have your turn.
Next subject.
Can I just say one thing?
China is investing. If you talk over everybody, please lose time.
Okay, so Brian, just lastly here, I know you got to go. You got to do a lot of TV tonight. Final thoughts.
Overall, I liked hearing some new subjects. I liked the new versions of these candidates. They clearly went back, retooled every single one of them, retooled how they were going to present their platforms, what they were going to concentrate on. I thought, setting aside the circus-like atmosphere that seems to attend all of these, I thought if a viewer sat down and watched for 2 hours, they came away with a better idea of who they like as we move forward. And if that's the litmus test, success.
All right, Brian Sobel there. As always, we do appreciate your insight into all of this. We know we're still so early. I mean, campaign season really is kicking off. Of course, we now know when the third RNC primary debate is going to be, November the 8th there in Miami. Brian, thanks so much.
You're very welcome, Andrew. Have a great night.
Thank you. We want to bring into the conversation.
All right, thanks so much. Listening in live, raw and unfiltered, raw and unfiltered, I should say, to that conversation. Andrew Kraft there breaking down the latest from that debate overnight, the second GOP presidential debate that was held and broadcast on Fox Business Network just last night over at the Reagan Presidential Library. All right, we want to get to a little breaking news happening just this morning. That is the aircraft carrying U.S. Army Private Travis King landing at the U.S. military base in Texas early this morning after being expelled from North Korea following his surprise dash across the heavily militarized border just 2 months ago. The plane, believed to be carrying King, landed at Joint Base San Antonio in the early hours of Thursday morning after King was handed over to U.S. custody on Wednesday, following his expulsion from North Korea and into China. While details about the diplomacy that led to King's transfer remain scarce, the development was a rare example of cooperation between the United States, North Korea, and China. King is 23 years old. He went to North Korea from the south on July 18th while on a civilian tour of their heavily fortified border and was immediately taken into North Korean custody after fleeing over. It's 7:14 now on the East Coast, 4:14 on the West Coast. We're headed out to a quick commercial break. This is Live Now from Fox. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Thanks for joining us. It's 7:16 now on the East Coast, 4:16 over on the West Coast. Just last night, New York City officials warning the city about ghost guns after they were found inside an East Harlem daycare. Taking a live look this morning over at, that is me, not New York City, but we will take a live look out to New York City right now. There's the Big Apple there as folks are waking up this morning. Again, 7:17 now on the East Coast. Live look over there in New York. And as we get back into that top story, an 18-year-old and two other minors were arrested after ghost guns and 3D printers were found at a daycare in East Harlem. Police say the 18-year-old Karan Kohli was running a ghost gun production operation out of the apartment he shares with his mother in the area of 117th Street, if you're familiar with that area of New York City, and that the guns were found in an unlocked room. Officials over in New York providing this comment just yesterday.
You good to go, sir? Heads up.
Thank you so much, Mayor Adams, and I'm joined by District Attorney Braggs and the Police Commissioner, Commissioner Caban, and our support teams. It does not give us any joy in coming here to talk about another case where a home daycare provider had children in a dangerous environment. And as we lay out this case and answer the questions from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to give clarity on the roles we are playing, we just want to really say to the parents who are dropping their children off every day to these centers that we are going to remain vigilant. We're going to continually modify the rules like they have been modified throughout the years to stay ahead of bad people that are doing bad things in environments where our children are. Who would have thought that we must add to our list of inspections do we have 3D printers that can print guns? Do we see the presence of various items like fentanyl and other items? These new methods of creating unsafe environments demand that we stay ahead of those who are doing terrible things in centers where we place our children. This is a terrible case. We saw the presence of fentanyl in the Bronx, and just really want to commend the law enforcement officers and the first responders who immediately made apprehensions. I believe we picked up one of the last people involved, if not more. We will continue to pursue that. But now we're finding, in addition to fentanyl, that in a similar setting, we saw the presence of ghost guns and devices that appear to make those guns. And so there is a law enforcement arm that we're going to continue to pursue. There are things that the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene that we are going to sit down with the group, a small working group, to look at what we must do legislatively, what we must do in enhancing the types of inspections that we do, and continuing education. And then there's an educational component that we're going to roll out with families because many of us that are parents are not familiar with some of the new devices that are being used to make guns, to store narcotics or drugs or opioids. And we need to really support families and parents on what they should look for in their household. I remember years ago when I was a state senator, I put out that video, what to look through your child's room, and many people, criticized me for doing so. But it's an educational material. It is unfair that parents are having this awesome responsibility while social media is teaching children how to do dangerous things, we need to teach parents how to stay one step ahead. And that is what we're going to do. I did it as a state senator, borough president, and I'm going to continue to do it as the mayor to give parents the tools that they need. This is a heartbreaking scenario of thinking that you're dropping your child off to a place of safe haven just to find out that it was a dangerous environment where someone was making a gun inside. And again, I want to thank the men and women of the New York City Police Department for moving in a rapid pace, and the District Attorney's Office and the judge for taking the steps that we needed to further this investigation. And we're going to work united. We are clear that we must protect children in this city, and we're going to lead the entire country on some of the methods that we will put in place to carry out this awesome responsibility. Police Commissioner Caban.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for coming. Disrupting the flow of illegal guns has been a top priority for this administration since day one. And when it comes to taking conventional guns off our streets, the NYPD is doing a fantastic job. Taking in excess of 12,000 legal firearms since January of 2022. We have also been tracking an emerging trend involving polymer P80 guns, or ghost guns as they are called. These plastic guns have been showing up more and more, demanding the attention of our intelligence division. In fact, a specialized team was created to go after those who sell and purchase ghost guns in New York City. We've also had great success in this area, and Deputy Commissioner Weiner will get into specifics shortly. But the world of guns continues to evolve. Criminals are always searching for ways to avoid the police, and the new frontier is 3D printing. 3D printed guns are among the easiest ways to obtain a gun. They can be made in your home. They can be made anonymously, and they are cheap, costing a fraction of the price for a traditional firearm or even a P80 firearm. 3D printed guns have dedicated online forums explaining how they work. And as today's arrest shows, these types of guns have captured the attention of our kids. The NYPD is not going to stand by and allow this emerging trend to take hold of our city. Today is a call to action. We are talking to the parents. Please check out what your kids are up to. Monitor their internet activities. We are also speaking to those who think printing 3D guns is the wave of the future. You are wrong. The NYPD is dialed in on this trend. We will hold anyone accountable who emerges in these crimes. I want to commend Inspector Nyland and her team for their tireless work. These cases are not easy. So much goes into tracing the online footprints of the suspects. Of course, once the case is made, we rely on our strong partnerships with the prosecutor to hold the suspects accountable. Today, we stand with the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, whose presence here sends a clear message. There is a united front on this issue and all matters of public safety. Together, we will continue to protect New Yorkers and make the safest big city in America even safer. Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Weiner.
Good morning, or afternoon rather, everyone. Rebecca Weiner, I'm NYPD's Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Counterterrorism. Yesterday, members of the Intelligence Division's Major Case Field Intelligence Team, in coordination with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, executed 3 search warrants in Manhattan North related to a long-term investigation into the manufacture and sale of privately made firearms, what are called PMFs, in New York City. These warrants resulted in the arrest of 3 individuals, including 2 minors, and the recovery of multiple 3D printed firearms. This is an ongoing investigation, and the information that we're going to present to you today is preliminary in nature. What I can say is that our investigation began with a group of individuals, including some minors, who were purchasing ghost gun parts from online retailers, as well as materials and filaments required to print 3D firearm components. Some of the purchases were made through fraudulent means, including the alleged identity theft of multiple victims across the United States. During the analysis of evidence recovered during the first 2 search warrants, investigators determined that an individual identified as 18-year-old Jamal Coley was also involved in the 3D printing of firearms. Acting swiftly on this new intelligence, our detectives worked with the Manhattan DA's office to execute an additional search warrant for Mr. Coley's residence. It's important for us to underline that this private residence located in the 25th precinct is also a licensed daycare operated by the subject's mother. Inside this daycare facility, investigators recovered a 3D printer, 3D printing tools and plastic filament, 2 completed 3D printed firearms, 1 3D printed assault pistol in the final stages of assembly, and 1 additional 3D printed lower receiver. Mr. Coley was arrested. At the location, investigators also found an obviously maltreated and neglected dog. The NYPD's Animal Cruelty Unit responded and removed the dog for evaluation. The circumstances around these galling arrests are part of a larger trend into what's become a global problem, namely the manufacture and sale of privately made firearms, or PMFs, which include ghost guns as well as 3D printed firearms. When made well, ghost guns and 3D printed firearms operate just like commercial firearms. In the hands of teenagers, they can inflict just as much violence. This is a growing trend in New York City, and one that our major case field intelligence team has been at the forefront of grappling with for the past several years. We take an intelligence-based approach to identifying and disrupting individuals who are engaged in the manufacture and sale of PMFs with the aim of intercepting guns before they make it to the streets. We follow the data where it leads us, and the data is alarming. Within the last 3 years, the number of PMFs and gun parts that we've recovered has increased significantly. In 2021, the NYPD recovered 260 PMFs, 263. Last year's number was almost double that, 436 recoveries. Year to date, the NYPD has recovered 290 PMFs. Compared to last year, we've recovered 3 times as many 3D printed firearms this year. And the year is not over yet. Since the 2021 inception of what we at the NYPD like to refer to as Inspector Courtney Nyland's Ghost Gun Team, we've recovered 500 PMFs and enough additional parts to construct 200 more. All of these guns and gun parts could have resulted in violence in our communities. We couldn't have done and don't.
You have been listening in raw and unfiltered over there in New York City as officials there raising the alarm about ghost guns across the city after several arrests being made after ghost guns, plastic guns being made by 3D printers found inside an East Harlem daycare. We're headed out to a quick commercial break here on Live Now from Fox, but when we return, jumping back into some of your top headlines, including really the very latest there on that debate just last night. We'll have a live interview in just 2 minutes. All right, welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. Time now 7:32 here on the East Coast, 4:32 over on the West Coast. We want to get out to the latest post-debate analysis following that electric debate between those 7 candidates on the stage in Simi Valley, California, the GOP presidential contenders going head-to-head. Now I want to bring in Dr. Mark Caleb Smith. He teaches courses in American politics as well as constitutional law over at Cedarville University over in Ohio. Thanks so much for joining us, Mark. We sure do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Let's jump right into this. I really want to talk winners and losers. Who were they last night?
I think in terms of winners, I think maybe Ron DeSantis did a little bit better last night than he has previously. I thought he was much more effective when he's talking about bottom line sorts of issues in Florida. And when he did interrupt, he was able to be heard. And I think he was generally more forceful, which is probably good for him. I think Doug Burgum actually handled himself very well. I'm not under any illusion that he's going to win this thing, but he was very substantive. He has a good deal of experience. And I think he had his priorities in order when he was talking about things that the president's going to have to deal with, at least over the next 4 years. When you think about losers, I mean, I really try my best not to be cynical, but I think the loser overall was the Republican Party. I thought the format was really poor. The moderators did not function very well. They lost control of the debate. There's a lot of crosstalk, and it was almost a circus-like atmosphere in all the worst ways for a long time. And then when you add in the absence of President Trump, the front runner just simply choosing not to be there, I think it really deflated the proceedings.
Absolutely. Definitely crowded on that stage with 7 people there. Who do you think may make it, may not make it to the next round? Of course, we're still working out the latest on that and working out to find out what those restrictions might be. But I imagine that wherever it goes next, it's going to be a lot tighter and things are going to start to button up.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I mean, I understand that everybody thinks they're going to catch fire. Everyone's sort of holding out hope that they're going to have a surge and get momentum and be able to rise in the polls. But I think so far it's fairly obvious that Doug Burgum, that Mike Pence, maybe even Tim Scott, and probably Chris Christie, unless his polling starts to improve, they need to think hard about their role in the race right now. They need to think about clearing the stage so that other people who are in a better position in terms of polling can consolidate the race and really start to decide who's going to take on Mr. Trump. I think all those candidates have their own version of how that might happen, but it's hard for me to see how someone might go from 2, 3, 4, 5% in the polls into the nominee. And so I hope that the stage clears and we get 3 or 4 people at the most. The sooner that happens, I think the better for the party and probably the better for the country.
Why don't we talk about the elephant not in the room last night as well? You did mention briefly there Mr. Trump over in Michigan last night as he was out there speaking with some auto workers as the union strike continues to loom overhead. What did we hear from Mr. Trump just last night, and what do you hope to see perhaps from him that we aren't seeing since he's absent on the debate stage?
You know, I think Trump is running this campaign essentially like he's an incumbent, and in many ways he is. His other party members really aren't willing to go after him all that directly. Last night in the debate, no one talked about his indictments. The moderators didn't talk about his indictments or his legal jeopardy or the possibility that he has business fraud on his hands now. And so his legal problems are still swirling around him. It's hard to know how those are going to affect the race. However, Mr. Trump is just sort of gliding above all of it. So I think it was smart for him politically to go to Detroit. He's certainly trying to build his brand, continue to build his brand among white, middle class or blue collar voters. And that's really going to be his source of support when he moves forward. So I think it's good politics for him in some ways to make the choice that he did. However, I would still say it's not good for the country when the front runner for a nomination just simply decides not to show up. I think it's better for the American people to see him on the stage with his rivals, defending himself, putting himself out there. I hope he chooses to do that sooner or later, but from a purely strategic perspective, I can see why he won't.
Well, and if you saw that recent Meet the Press interview with Mr. Trump as the new moderator took over there on NBC, he was asked a number of questions about how he's going to run the country in the future. And Mr. Trump really doesn't appear to be hitting on the issues as much. And I don't know if you can comment on that.
Yeah. When you listen to him, it sounds like he's really plugged into sort of a grievance approach to politics right now. He certainly feels a lot of resentment over what happened in 2020. He thinks he was mistreated by the press as well as the Department of Justice and other entities while he was president. And that's really fueling his campaign in a way. And yeah, I would normally say that, by distracting from issues and by focusing on other things, that's really a recipe for disaster for a candidate. But I think Mr. Trump is probably doing the right thing politically. Just even listening to the debate last night, it didn't really feel like policy was driving the debate. It was really more about other kinds of issues, people just trying to score points. It was a little bit silly in a way. And so to focus on policy and to get into detailed policy briefs and things like that, it just doesn't feel like that's the mood of the electorate at the moment. And so our politics right now is drifting in a cultural direction, not so much in a policy direction.
As we get a little bit closer to the actual election itself, though, do you expect that voters may be tuning in a little bit more closely to those policy issues? Of course, a couple come to mind. I mean, we have the government shutdown now looming over our head, and of course, the crisis at the U.S. border still on the minds of many Americans. At what point does policy, do you believe, or will it in this next election really become the prime focus?
I think it's a great question, and I think anyone who pretends they know the answer to that question is just fooling themselves. Our politics over the last 8 to 10 years have been very unpredictable, driven by external events, driven by emotion, and so I'm not necessarily convinced that there's going to be a drift back toward policy as we get closer. I think it probably will focus even more on personalities and more on the characteristics of the candidates, their age, their suitability for office, how relatable they are. Now, if the economy continues to struggle and if the middle class continues to get squeezed through high interest rates and other things, then I do think the economy will step forward as a major issue. But if the economy smooths out at all, then I'd expect these cultural kinds of issues to become dominant again. But we'll see. I think it's a great question, and I'm not sure we have a great answer as of yet.
I know it's still early, but if there was a way to potentially narrow down 2 GOP contenders that you would like to see perhaps in a final debate right before the primary, who do you think might be the 2 top for that?
I think, and I'm certainly ready to be proven wrong, I think that Nikki Haley is probably in the best position to move forward out of this field. Ron DeSantis has really struggled to get traction recently, and I don't know if that's going to change based on last night. I think Nikki Haley is getting the attention of donors. For people who want to see an alternative to President Trump, I think she's emerging as the most likely alternative. I would like to see her and Donald Trump go after each other in a real debate, a substantive debate over the future of the country. I think that would be the best for the party, and it would ultimately be best for the United States to see sort of a substantive argument between 2 people with strong disagreements.
I think that would certainly be an interesting matchup. And of course, maybe a Haley-Biden debate, a Haley-Trump debate could also be very interesting as well. A lot to look forward to in this next election cycle, not very far out. I know we're less than 400 days away now from that. Meanwhile, Dr. Mark Caleb Smith over there at Cedarville University. Anything we didn't ask you? Anything you'd like to add?
I think it's really interesting that the setting last night in the Reagan Library, Reagan sort of hovered over that debate to some extent, but it was interesting to me how much the party has really moved past Ronald Reagan and his ideology. Right now the Republican Party is just sort of, it's finding its way and its voice. It's entering into a new phase of politics. As a political scientist, it's interesting to watch.
All right, Dr. Mark Caleb, thanks so much there for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we are going to head out to a quick commercial break here on Live Now. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Giacomo Luca. We appreciate everybody for joining us here at 7:44 now on the East Coast this Thursday, September the 28th. It is 4:44 over on the West Coast. Taking a live look out at the U.S. Capitol, where later today we are expecting Hawaii's top public utility officials and the president of Hawaiian Electric to be on Capitol Hill this morning during a hearing about the role that electrical company and the electric grid may have played in last month's deadly Maui wildfire. Members of a U.S. Energy and Commerce subcommittee, they're expected to question the utility officials about how the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century began and whether the electrical grid in Lahaina was safe and properly maintained. The fire killed at least 97 people and destroyed more than 2,000 buildings. Most of them were homes. It first erupted around 6:30 in the morning on August the 8th when strong winds appeared to cause a Hawaiian electric power line to fall, igniting dry brush and grass near a large subdivision. Among those expected to testify are Hawaiian Electric CEO Shale Kimura, Hawaii Public Utilities Commission Chair Leo Doloff, Asuncion, and Hawaii's Chief Energy Officer Mark Glick. Also happening later today over on Capitol Hill around the same time, we also know that there will be that House hearing looking into the impeachment inquiry of U.S. President Joe Biden. And U.S. President Joe Biden, and we'll definitely be covering that around 10 a.m. today. Republicans have been insisting for really months now that that they have grounds to launch that impeachment proceedings against the president. They'll begin formally making their case to the public and their skeptical colleagues over in the Senate again today, 10 a.m. Chairman of Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means will hold the opening hearing of that impeachment inquiry by reviewing the constitutional and legal questions surrounding their investigation of Biden and what they say are links to his son Hunter's overseas businesses. So stay tuned for that here, live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox as we continue getting into some of the top stories of the day. U.S. President former President Donald Trump was over in Michigan just yesterday as well, not participating in that debate, but he did speak. He obviously didn't participate in the debate over in California, instead opting to go to Michigan to speak with a number of union workers who are currently on strike. We do want to go ahead and play out some of that speech, just the top of it there, as Mr. Trump took off over in Detroit.
These really great Americans who do not get the credit they deserve. You don't get the credit they deserve. Now they want to go all electric and put you all out of business. You know that, right? To the welders, assembly line workers, machine operators, forklift drivers, pipe fitters, tool and die makers, mechanics, electricians, technicians, and journeymen. We love being with you, and we love being with you right in your environment. We built this country, you love this country, and you are the ones that make our country run. You know that, right? Before I stepped into the political arena 7 years ago, I spent my whole life working alongside of Americans just like you. I spent a lot of time with you. You just don't know that, but I spent a lot of time with you. And people just like you now, I put everything on the line to fight for you. I've risked it all to defend the working class from the corrupt political class that has spent decades sucking the life, wealth, and blood out of this country. That's why I'm here tonight to lay out a vision for a revival of economic nationalism and our automobile manufacturing lifeblood, which they're sucking out of our country. I want a future that protects American labor, not foreign labor. A future that puts American dreams over foreign profits, and a future that raises American wages, that strengthens American industry, that builds national pride and that defends this country's dignity, not squanders it all to build up foreign countries that hate us.
All right, just a little bit of those comments from Mr. Trump's, quote, counter debate, if you will, or counter speech as that other debate was happening on Fox Business, the GOP debate, I should say. Okay, let's go ahead and change gears right now as we head out to Fort Myers, Florida, where we have Robert Ray standing by as we are approaching that anniversary of Hurricane Ian. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning to you from Fort Myers Beach here. 1 year ago, was standing here with the crew and we decided we needed to leave the beach as storm surge was about to come in. And glad we did because 15 feet plus moved in and destroyed this barrier island. Well, I took a look at many of the places we reported from a year ago to kind of give a perspective of then and now. Have a watch. On the evening of September 27th, as the outer bands of Hurricane Ian was making its way into Fort Myers Beach, I had a sense that this could be historic. Okay. Stand by, guys. After a full morning and day of Hurricane Ian battering the region, we ended up here. My photographer Rick and I in downtown Fort Myers. In fact, look at this. This exact location where I'm walking right now was taking storm surge from the river right adjacent to the downtown area, making it difficult to report. The power of the storm just being unleashed. The energy, and it's nowhere near over as it will continue up the peninsula. And I can tell you, my photographer, I watched him get lifted 2 feet in the air from a wind gust and dropped back down. He was fine, but it was a scary, scary moment. On the morning of September 29th, after Ian ravaged the area and killed many, we came to this location, and this may not look like much right now with the fence and the harbor here on the river, but look at it on September 29th. Piles of vessels just thrown around as if they were tinker toys. The smell of fuel, oil, the sounds of alarms from the boats, a scene that really I will never forget. This area of Fort Myers Beach was inundated with up to 15 feet of storm surge, and this is the Times Square area. Take a look at the video that you're seeing, and this is the destruction the day and 2 days after, and the piles of rubble and the one path that was cleared to walk through here, and you see it. And now I'm walking that exact same path here in Times Square, Fort Myers Beach. And you see some of the areas they're trying to restore and get back on their feet. Food trucks right there, heavy moving machinery still, but yet the pier, the famous Fort Myers Beach pier, still ripped apart in shreds as buildings, just the slates, exist.
And it's sad because we grew up here and then all the things that we knew when we grew up here are all gone. So, but it's coming back slowly, and they kept saying it was going to be a year, and it's a year and things are not back to normal. And then I feel bad for the people who never evacuated and lost their lives here. So, and I knew a couple of them, so that's really sad.
Here we go. Paradise lost, but not forever. As you could hear the sounds of recovery in the background, the sun just up here in Fort Myers Beach, and the famous Fort Myers Pier still destroyed. But there is hope it will come back, as many people are out this morning walking and reminiscing and paying homage to a place that has meant so much to families over the many decades of not only the past century, but this century. It's going to take a long time to get Fort Myers Beach back, to cut through the insurance issues, the federal, state, and local bureaucracy. And of course, people need cash. And the markets are very inflated right now as far as real estate. Lots of work ahead. Back to you.
Well, Robert, I just have to say, such a moving piece there as we remember the impacts of Hurricane Ian just a year later. The visuals so stunning and remarkable, frightening as well, to think of so much impact there and the impact on people there. But thank you so much for that report. Robert Ray there with Fox Weather, joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, 7:55 now on the East Coast, 4:55 over on the West Coast. Let's go ahead and take a live look out at New York City as we go to our final commercial break of the hour. This is Live Now from Fox.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. It's almost the top of the hour, 7:58 on the East Coast, 4:58 on the West Coast. So happy to be with you all on this Thursday. It's September 28th. As I like to call Thursday, it is Friday Eve. I'm looking at our live feeds right now. We do have a live event coming through, live, raw, and unfiltered on your screen. This is the Ganesh Festival. So this is something you don't get to see very often, but very interesting to see nonetheless. So a little information about the Ganesh Festival. The annual festival ends with thousands of devotees parading idols of the elephant you see on your screen. So that's the elephant-headed Hindu god Ganesh. They also immerse them in the sea to symbolize the natural cycle of creation and dissolution. All Hindu prayers begin with an invocation to Ganesh, and Ganesh is their god of knowledge, wisdom, and good fortune. Let's watch this live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox.
ओके झाला थोडा तरी इसको चिपका के मारना काय करना बघू काय घंटा 68 मूर्ती आहे शिवशंभू मित्रमंडळ मुंबई यांचं हार्दिक स्वागत पूर्णांक पोथिया हा 11 वर्षाचा मुलगा हरवला आहे. त्याचे नातेवाईक तिथे मंडपाजवळ जमले. पूर्णांक पोथिया 11 वर्षाचा मुलगा जो आहे तो कुठे सापडलाय आणि मंडळाच्या ठिकाणी यायचं आहे. तिथे महानगरपालिकेच्या स्टॉलजवळ यायचं आहे. त्याच्या नातेवाईक या ठिकाणी उभे आहेत. केबल आता कुठे लाईव्ह कुठे आता पुढे स्टॉल आहे दुकान याला तुमचं एक रेन कवर आहे ना रेन कवर लागेल तिथे लावून ठेव कॅमेरा आहे ना फिक्स आहे ना हे करूया आपण त्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून दिला आहे. महानगरपालिकेकडून दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांचं हार्दिक स्वागत स्वागत स्वागत. दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी पुढे सरकायचं आहे. मुंबई वाहतूक पोलीस आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून देत आहेत. दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळ कार्यकर्त्यांनी पुढे सरकायचं आहे. दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळ बाप्पाच्या मूर्ती पुढची गाडी पुढे घ्यायची आहे. दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाचे कार्यकर्ते यांनी पुढे सरकायचं आहे. मुंबई वाहतूक पोलीस आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून देतात आहे. गणपती बाप्पा मंगल मूर्ती. कार्यकर्त्यांनी पुढे चालत राहायचं आहे. मुंबई महानगरपालिका आणि वाहतूक पोलीस यांच्याकडून देण्यात येणाऱ्या सूचनांचं पालन करायचं आहे. दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाचे कार्यकर्ते मुंबई महानगरपालिकेकडून आपलं स्वागत. मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी विनंती आहे की वाहतूक पोलीस हे आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून देत आहेत. आपण कृपया सहकार्य करावं. सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळ मुंबई वाहतूक पोलिसांनी आपल्यासाठी जागा रिकामी करून दिली. कार्यकर्त्यांनी पुढे सरकत राहायचं आहे. कृपया सहकार्य करा. दुसरी सुतारगल्ली सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळ कार्यकर्त्यांनी पुढे सरकत राहायचं आहे. धन्यवाद. सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाचं मुंबई महानगरपालिकेकडून हार्दिक स्वागत स्वागत स्वागत. गणपती बाप्पा मंगल मूर्ती. अखेर विठ्ठलवाडी सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी विनंती आहे. मुंबई वाहतूक पोलीस आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून देत आहे. मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी विनंती आहे त्यांनी पुढे सरकावं. लाईव्ह फायर गणेशोत्सव मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांचं हार्दिक स्वागत स्वागत स्वागत. चला गणपती बाप्पा मंगलमूर्ती. पंचशील गणेशोत्सव मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांना विनंती आहे की त्यांनी पुढे चालत राहायचं आहे. मुंबई वाहतूक पोलीस आपल्यासाठी मार्गावर रिकामा करतोय. पंचशील सार्वजनिक गणेशोत्सव मंडळाचे कार्यकर्ते मुंबई वाहतूक पोलिसांनी आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून दिलाय. सुद्धा पुढे मार्गक्रमण करायचं आहे. मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी विनंती पुढे चालत राहायचं आहे. पंचशील गणेशोत्सव मंडळ पंचशील गणेशोत्सव मंडळाचे कार्यकर्ते थोडी पावलं वेगाने वाढवा. आपल्यासाठी मुंबई वाहतूक पोलिसांनी मार्ग रिकामा केलाय. मुंबई महानगरपालिकेकडून विघ्नहर्ता सांस्कृतिक मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांचं हार्दिक स्वागत स्वागत स्वागत. मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी विनंती आहे मुंबई वाहतूक पोलीस आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून देत आहे. त्यामुळे पुढे सरकारचं आपण मुंबईचं शाळू लंबोदर अशी चंद्रावरची सुंदर अशी मूर्ती या मंडळाने साकारलेली आहे. मंडळाच्या कार्यकर्त्यांनी विनंती आहे मुंबई वाहतूक पोलीस आपल्यासाठी मार्ग रिकामा करून देत आहे. कार्यकर्त्यांनी पुढे चालायचं आहे.
If you're just now tuning into Live Now from Fox, a pretty amazing visual on your screen. This is the annual Ganesh Festival, ending with thousands of devotees parading idols of the elephant-headed Hindu god Ganesh. Those are the elephants you see on your screen. They then immerse them into the sea to symbolize the natural cycle of creation and dissolution. All Hindu prayers begin with an invocation to Ganesh. Again, that is the idol you see on your screen, which represents knowledge, wisdom, and good fortune in their religion. I'm Jeanne Francine. The time 8:14 on the East Coast, 5:14 on the West Coast. It is Friday Eve, Thursday, September 28th. Good morning to you all. I appreciate you waking up early with me here on Live Now from Fox. Let's go to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour, and when we come back, getting right back into your live events and top stories. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's get into one of our many top stories we are following this morning, which does include a potential government shutdown that could begin Sunday if no deal is reached. Joining us this morning, live, raw, and unfiltered, Bob Barnard with Fox 5 DC. Bob, good morning to you. The big question this morning, are we even close to reaching a deal?
Hey, Jeanne, good morning. I don't think so. There is a bipartisan deal in the Democrat-led Senate that is out there that would fund the federal government beyond this weekend. But in the Democrat-controlled House, there's really nothing concrete being put together that could possibly be sent to the Senate to kind of work some kind of deal out. So right now, in terms of what's going on in Congress, it does not look like there's anything tangible to potentially hold off a partial or full federal government shutdown, which would take effect at 12:01 a.m. Sunday with the start of the new fiscal year. So we just don't know. OMB and OPM, which are the agencies that kind of like run the government in a sense on the administrative side, they apparently are going to start reaching out to the federal government agencies, talking about contingency plans, kind of laying out which of their employees will be furloughed and not paid, which will be deemed essential and not be paid. You've got a lot of federal agencies here in the D.C. area, so the impacts here in Washington will be felt. I mean, this is a downtown area that is still recovering from the pandemic. A lot of the businesses still suffering, a lot of the federal employees still working from home. Compound that with a government shutdown, and for one, a longtime D.C. restaurant owner who we've spoken to says this would not be good, at least not for the D.C. economy.
I've been here 34 years doing this. I've seen this so many times. You know, federal government, not funding, closing. If you remember President Clinton's time, it was closed for many days when Speaker Newt Gingrich was there. So I've gone through the cycle so many times, but you never get used to it. Okay, because it affects everybody. It affects the staff, and that's the hardest part of it is, okay? The people who just can't make a living, because they live on hourly wages, right? So it affects his staff, it affects the morale. And you know, honestly speaking, it really doesn't make us look good around the world either. You know, that's, you know, United States is the most powerful country in the world, and, you know, we still can't agree on a budget. It's always an issue, you know. And I'm certainly hopeful, Bob, that they will adopt this Senate passed bill for next, whatever, 6 weeks and come up with a resolution.
Now, the last time there was a federal government shutdown, Janae, that was back in 2018. It lasted for 35 days, and the implications beyond, outside of Washington, are great. You know, we're told your Social Security checks will still come. They might be a little slow. TSA will be deemed essential. Air traffic controllers will, so if you've got travel plans, not necessarily have to worry about that. But the federal workers who won't be paid in the interim, they're the ones who we've been speaking to here in the D.C. area who say they'll have to make some changes to their plans. The last government shutdown carried over Christmas, so a lot of people had to cut back on their plans, couldn't leave in case the government was funded, and had to get right back to work. So, I mean, it's just a big mess. It doesn't look like, at least right now, lawmakers here in Washington are prepared to kind of come up with a deal to avert a federal government shutdown. So, Janae, I mean, people are going to feel this in a lot of different ways. Here in Washington, you know, the memorials will be perhaps off limits. Back in 2013, as a matter of fact, they put fencing around some of the monuments and memorials here in Washington. They didn't do that in 2018, so nobody knows how it's going to look, but a lot of things are going to be closed, not only here in Washington, but across the country.
Bob, great reporting right there. I want to ask you, if nothing happens today or Friday, are they expected to meet over the weekend on a Saturday just to try to get this deal done?
Yeah, I believe so, because the fiscal year ends at midnight Saturday. So the shutdown would kind of, we're told, take effect at 12:01 a.m. Sunday, October 1st. So, yeah, they'll be negotiating up to the last minute. And if there is no deal reached, on into Sunday and next week. I mean, you get the sense that the pressure is on the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker, trying to kind of rein in some of his far-right Republicans who don't want to make a deal, to see if they can come up with something to align with what the Senate has to try to keep the government funded and open. So we'll have to see, but the work will continue.
All right, Bob Barner with Fox 5 DC, thank you so much for keeping us informed, and thank you again for joining us here this morning on Live Now from Fox.
You bet, Janae.
All right, the time now 8:22 on the East Coast, 5:22 on the West Coast. Let's go to our second 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And of course, when we come back, checking all of your live events, top stories, and headlines. I'm Jeanne Francine. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. It is Friday Eve, Thursday, September 28th. Good morning to you all waking up with us here on Live Now from Fox. It's 8:25 on the East Coast, 5:25 on the West Coast. Let's continue to get into your top stories. We know that the second GOP debate was actually held last night in California. Fox News' Doug Luzader gives us a recap.
Well, Donald Trump saw no reason to join the fight, and that's exactly what it was last night on a surprising range of topics.
Did you send them back?
It's the State Department.
Did you send them back?
You send them back? You're the one that works in Congress.
That, believe it or not, was an argument over government curtains, showing just how anxious some of these candidates were to go after one another.
Excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting while I'm speaking.
You said
if I may finish.
It was hard to get a word in at times, even between shots at President Biden.
And I refuse to be a passive bystander sitting in the White House like the hollowed out husk of a current president we have.
But beyond attacking Biden and one another, often the focus was on former President Donald Trump, who declined to participate.
And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action.
You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
Thank you very much.
For his part, Trump offered his own bit of counter-programming, speaking to auto workers in Michigan last night. He said his fellow candidates are hoping for a job in his administration.
They'll do anything. Secretary of something. They even say VP. I don't know. Does anybody see any VP in the group? I don't think so.
And each of these seven are essentially competing to be the prime alternative to Trump. And sharp elbows were the order of the day.
Honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say.
But at the same time, there were nods to the venue itself, the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and the man who stood for so long as the standard bearer for the party.
The city on the hill needs a brand new leader, and I'm asking for your vote.
Now, after this, we may see this GOP field begin to shrink as the party gets ready for its next debate in Miami on November 8th. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
All right, Doug, thank you so much for that report. Now, if you all were watching last night, you know the debate was aired on Fox News Channel and Fox Business. We weren't able to air that debate here on Live Now from Fox, but nevertheless, we did provide some post-debate analysis. My colleague Andrew Kraft brings that to you now.
Right now, I have Brian Sobel on the line. He watched the debate. He's a political strategist and analyst. We've spoken to Brian many times in the past. Brian, good to see you here. I know the debate just wrapped up. We're going to dive into some of these key highlights as well. What did you make of it? Because, you know, this was the second chance these candidates had the opportunity to make their case to Republican primary voters and the American people. And you know, having just watched it and seen some of the reaction on social media, it doesn't seem like anyone came out on top. There were no clear breakthrough moments.
No, and Andrew, I think what we saw tonight was, in the case of a lot of these candidates, the 2.0 version. Ramaswamy, the statement that he made about, you know, he's aggressive, he's young, but he's got energy and he's hungry. And you saw that each candidate had looked at their first debate and went through a process of deciding what worked and what didn't work. DeSantis, to me, this evening looked a lot different. Nikki Haley, I thought, was steady as she was in the first debate. And I thought that that Mike Pence was kind of, in a sense, a little bit of an afterthought. One of the things with him, Andrew, is that as these candidates are attacking, as an example, the trillions of dollars added to the debt by the Trump administration, by extension, Mike Pence is involved with that. And he's trying to distance himself from Donald Trump, but he was vice president. So he's got a tough thing to work with there. A couple of the other people on the stage, okay. I thought Chris Christie looked better tonight.
Okay, so Brian, while we have you with us, we want to just show some of the highlights from the debate that we have kind of picked out for the viewers, in case they watched it on the Fox Business Network or in case they did not. But yet again, there was so many back and forths between Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley, and I just want to play that for some of the viewers. Let's watch this one.
every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150 million people are on TikTok. That means they can get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails, they can get text messages, they can get all of these things.
This is very important for our party.
Exactly what they're doing.
This is very important for our party, and I'm going to say
you've gone and you've helped China make medicines in China, not America. You're now wanting kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't.
Okay, so Brian, Nikki Haley getting quite personal there, telling Vivek Ramaswamy, every time you speak, I get dumber. It did seem like the knives were out for Nikki Haley, of course, after the last debate, the first debate there in Milwaukee. She saw somewhat of a bump in the polls and in her fundraising. So was she the one to beat tonight?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Andrew. I think if we wanted to phrase it differently, she was the one that needed to be knocked down a peg by these other candidates. And she, I think, comported herself well, one woman on the stage of 7 people. And you could see she's willing to go toe-to-toe with people. I mean, when she told Tim Scott to bring it on, she obviously is there to debate, and she's a policy master. But there are other people on that stage that, are her equal in many of the policy areas and in trying to understand the American people. I thought, setting aside all of the yelling at each other and lack of control by the moderators, which isn't their fault, it just becomes kind of a 3-ring circus. I think there were some nuggets that we heard tonight about particularly China, which was not very much a subject in the first debate, but is becoming an increasing subject as we move forward towards the presidential election.
Yeah, of course, these clips courtesy of Fox Business Network. We see right now, this is happening live, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum speaking there in the spin room. I mean, Brian, some of these lower tier candidates, when are they going to stop, or rather start, to really drop out, to coalesce around a second place candidate there? Of course, Trump is in first right now. Is Doug Burgum going to be one of them? I mean, he made and he qualified this debate there. You see him walking on, but did he get much time tonight?
No, and somebody like the governor and Asa Hutchinson and some of these lower tiered candidates, they really should move on for the party, actually, and for the debate that the Republicans want to have. I think Dana Perino pointed out that, there must be a calculation about how you're going to obtain the nomination. We heard her ask that question tonight, kind of sophomoric with the write down the guy you want off the island or whatever. But setting that aside, it is true that some of these people are never going to be nominated and really need to take a hard look at it. I would like to see, 3 to 4 people on the stage really going at it.
Yeah, and of course we did hear from Asa Hutchinson. I mean, he didn't make the stage tonight, but he said they're going to kind of reassess around Thanksgiving and maybe later into the fall and early winter. We'll see some of these candidates drop out, coalesce around some of these other higher polling candidates as well. One of those, though, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, he's the one that has really staked his campaign, at least the campaign's message, going after Donald Trump directly, and he did that tonight. Kind of came up with a funny nickname, kind of tongue-in-cheek, going after Trump for not attending the debates at all. I want to play that soundbite here. Let's watch.
Sure.
We've got to bring law and order back to this country. And not just in our cities, but we need law and order back everywhere. We need law and order back in our suburbs. People are threatened there. We need it in our rural areas. People feel threatened there. And we need it in Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right.
somewhat pleased with himself with that nickname he came up with there. I don't know if it was in the moment or kind of canned and he used it beforehand.
Andrew, it was not in the moment.
Okay, but to Chris Christie's point, I mean, does Donald Trump even need to be at these debates? Obviously, it would be nice, for Republican primary voters to hear from him yet again. We showed his entire remarks there in Detroit tonight, talking about the UAW strike. But he is the elephant not in the room. But does that do any of them a service that he's not there, or a disservice?
Well, to the extent that the people on the stage over the last two debates where Donald Trump wasn't, they got more airtime. I mean, they got more time to talk. But I think all of the kind of the back and forth, the accusations and everything else would be magnified if Donald Trump were there. But the problem with Donald Trump not being there and making excuses for not being there is, as somebody said, I think it was Chris Christie, has said, it's disrespectful. And I think that's the thing here. Now, maybe it won't matter a whit. Maybe the people who are looking for a Republican candidate don't care that Donald Trump is there or not. But, in the history of American politics, we have people getting out there and greeting the voters and debating their opponents. And so him not being there, Donald Trump not being there, again, it strikes me as somewhat disrespectful.
Okay, so I just want to go into the issues. I mean, do you think, I want to contrast, from the first debate to this debate. I was in Milwaukee. I thought the issues really were gotten into in Milwaukee. Was that the case here, or was there just bickering? Did the moderators really have a hard time, reining these candidates in?
Yes. I think, even at a couple of points, the moderators were kind of stepping on each other's sound bites and all of that. There are three of them there. That's tough. I know they wanted Univision to be a part of it for Latino and Hispanic voters. Totally get that. But three is a lot of people, 7 on the stage. So you have 10 people trying to interact. And whether you're going to get a whole lot of content is really the question. Yeah. I thought there was some content tonight. I thought they did talk about some issues they didn't talk about in the first debate. I thought they got much deeper into education, as an example.
Okay, yeah. Because
transgender issues, things like that. Those didn't come up the first debate. They were front and center tonight.
Yeah, because that is a storyline of these debates. How did the moderators do, whether or not order was kept? And we can I want to play this next kind of exchange here, and you can see it kind of devolve. Let's watch, courtesy of Fox Business Network.
We can get things done. If we want to get things done, here's how we get it done in Washington. We must find a way.
Can we please respect the time?
We can get some of us are painted, but the bottom line is we need to buy paper.
Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting. While I'm speaking.
Well, you said buy paper.
If I may finish.
You can't be on both sides.
Gentlemen, you'll have your turn.
Next subject.
Can I just say one thing?
China is investing. If you talk over everybody, please lose time.
Okay, so Brian, just lastly here, I know you got to go. You got to do a lot of TV tonight. Final thoughts.
Overall, I liked hearing some new subjects. I liked the new versions of these candidates. They clearly went back, retooled every single one of them, retooled how they were going to present their platforms, what they were going to concentrate on. I thought, setting aside the circus-like atmosphere that seems to attend all of these, I thought if a viewer sat down and watched for 2 hours, they came away with a better idea of who they like as we move forward. And if that's the litmus test, success.
All right, Brian Sobel there. As always, we do appreciate your insight into all of this. We know we're still so early. I mean, campaign season really is kicking off. Of course, we now know when the third RNC primary debate is going to be, November the 8th there in Miami. Brian, thanks so much.
You're very welcome, Andrew. Have a great night.
Thank you. We want to bring into
All right, and I appreciate my colleague Andrew Kraft bringing us that post-debate analysis. Again, we could not air that here on Live Now from Fox, but of course, our content partners over at Fox News Channel and Fox Business did air it. I do see a live feed coming through our studios right now, so I want to bring that to you now, live, raw, and unfiltered. That's out in Venice, Florida. This is day 5 of the Take Care of Maya trial. The family of Maya Kowalski suing Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital for the treatment of Maya and her mother's suicide. Right now, the attorneys are speaking with the judge. Maya there on your screen right there, she was just scratching her head. Let's listen into the proceedings, live, raw, and unfiltered.
We're saying that we have no objection to them being admitted, Judge. We do have some concerns that we raised to some. So it's hard to do. We're not objecting to them being in evidence, but we had some concerns about them being published to the jury without context, and we mentioned that when we noted it.
Okay, well, for those that I see that are clean, I'm going to go ahead and admit them. So at this time, the court's going to admit Exhibit 2528, pages 8, 14, 21, 24, 37, 45, 70, 102, 115, 124, 129. With respect to Exhibit 2529, pages 5, 19, 26, 35, 39, 42, 69. With respect to Exhibit 2530, pages 43, 46, 61. With respect to Exhibit 2532, the court will receive page 1, page 26, page 39, with respect to Exhibit 2571, page 30, and the court will also receive Exhibit 250, sorry, strike that. The court will receive Exhibit 2705. Okay, I think those were all that were clean. What's next? We lost Mr. Anderson.
I was just making sure my expert came in.
Judge, if I can, do you want me to explain the objection to description comment?
Sure. Are we on 2529-058, or is this?
041, I think, is the first. 2529-041. Because it's the same comment for all of them. Judge, really my concern is I didn't know what the court's intention was with respect to when the exhibits go back with the jury. Are they going to be giving this detailed list? If the jury's not getting this description, then we don't care. But if this is a description that's going back with the jury, then we do.
Well, normally we don't send back a table of contents.
Yeah, but there's one in each of them.
Okay. What I would suggest is, when we are getting to the point of getting ready to send the case to the jury, then I'm going to have the lawyers work with the clerk's office, because if we're only entering certain exhibits, we're going to have to be very clear what is in. And then perhaps what we could do is create a clean exhibit table for the jury.
I think they'll need one, Judge. I'm not disputing that.
Yeah. But the ones that we've been working on would not, in my mind, ever go back, because there's lots of commentary on them that are not appropriate for the jury.
That was my concern.
So
if this description is not going back to the jury, then we'll remove the objection to description.
Okay, so the court at this point will also receive Exhibit 2529, page 41, 48, 61. I'm sorry?
You said 48, I think you meant 58.
Oh, I apologize, not 48, 58. So it's 2529, page 41, page 58, page 61. The court will also receive Exhibit 2571, pages 1 and 26, page 40, page 53. Court will also receive Exhibit 2604.
Can I, Judge, briefly?
If you're just now tuning into Live Now from Fox, on your screen, live, raw, and unfiltered out in Venice, Florida. It is day 5 of the Take Care of Maya trial. Right now, attorneys are discussing evidence that should be allowed in the trial with the attorney. If you're unfamiliar with this trial, the family of Maya Kowalski suing Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital for the alleged mistreatment of Maya. And they're also saying that because of that mistreatment and separation from her daughter, that ultimately led to Maya's mother committing suicide. A lot of things to unwrap in this case, and of course we will continue to follow it live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. The time 8:46 on the East Coast, 5:46 on the West Coast. Let's go to a quick 2-minute commercial break, and when we come back, getting right back into your top stories and headlines. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's get into our top stories of the day. As we enter day 14 of the historic UAW strike, the union's leader is giving automakers until tomorrow to make serious progress in negotiations or expect more strike targets. Fox 2 Detroit's Robin Murdoch joining us live from Wayne this morning. Robin, good morning to you. Always a pleasure having you here on Live Now. I see that the rain is not stopping any of the strikers behind you.
No, they are going strong behind me here. And as you mentioned, yes, UAW President Shawn Fain, he is expected to give another Facebook Live update concerning how talks are going, how these contract talks are going. And we could possibly see more locations added to the strike list. I will step out of the way now so we can give you a live look at this strike effort that is going on behind me outside the Ford, Michigan assembly plant here in Wayne. And as you can imagine, the workers out here, they will likely be paying very close attention to Shawn Fain's announcement when it does happen tomorrow. They have been out here in the rain, and this is probably the worst weather that we have seen for them in the last 2 weeks. And this site, it really is important because this is among the first 3 locations called to stand up and strike when those contracts expired 2 weeks ago. Last Friday, as you know, those targeted strike sites were expanded to include 38 more GM and Stellantis parts distribution centers in 20 states. Ford was spared, though, due to progress with its contract talks. And again, tomorrow, we will learn more about whether more locations could be added to the list, whether more workers could be called on to strike as a result of this historic effort that is going on right now in our country. That announcement is expected to happen at 10 o'clock this morning. We will, of course, be watching it very closely, as well as the striking workers outside the Ford, Michigan assembly plant here behind me in Wayne. We are live in Wayne this morning. I'm Robin Murdoch. I'll send it back to you.
Robin, thank you so much for that report. I know one of the main things the strikers have been speaking about is pay. They're saying it's sad when they can't even afford the cars that they're making inside of those warehouses. Are you hearing any other concerns from strikers besides pay?
You know, pay, obviously a huge concern. That is a great point that you bring up. They want to get rid of a tiered wage system, too, in which people working alongside each other, somebody may be making much less money compared to somebody who is doing the exact same job. So they are trying to get rid of that altogether. They want pensions restored. They do have a lot of demands concerning this, and they say that they are willing to fight. They're willing to walk the picket line in the rain, in the sun, snow, sleet. It does not matter because they want their fair share of the record profits that some of these CEOs are making. Back to you.
All right, Robin Murdoch with Fox News Detroit out there in the rain with the strikers. Robin, we always appreciate you providing perspective and great reporting here on Live Now from Fox. You be safe out there. The time now 8:51 on the East Coast, 5:51 on the West Coast. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's go to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, getting right back into your top stories and live events. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. The time 8:54 on the East Coast, 5:54 on the West Coast. Almost the top of the hour. Thank you so much for waking up with us here on Live Now. It is Thursday, September 28th, Friday Eve for those of you that don't work on the weekend. So one day until your freedom and relaxation. Looking at the feeds, we do have some live events coming through our studios right now. The Take Care of Maya trial, day 5 out there live in Venice, Florida. For those of you unfamiliar with the trial, the family of Maya Kowalski suing Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital for the alleged mistreatment of Maya, and they're also saying that mistreatment and separation, keeping her away from her mother, ultimately led to the unfortunate suicide of her mother taking her own life. The last time we dipped into this, the attorneys were speaking to the judge about evidence that they think should be allowed in the trial. Let's listen in live, raw, and unfiltered to the proceedings right now.
Physical and sexual abuse on multiple occasions. We stood up, we objected, the court sustained our objection and instructed the jury to disregard. We think that more needs to be done because, frankly, I just heard the word sexual. I didn't even take in the whole thing, but I read it. It made me more concerned, and we think that the court should instruct the jury that there are no claims for sexual abuse by the Kowalskis, because this statement is that she complained to the doctors of physical and sexual abuse on multiple occasions, and at this point the jury may think, well, that maybe they just ought to be allowed to hear about it.
I think this is a conversation more than the 5 minutes we have left. Maybe we can address that this afternoon.
All right, thank you, Judge.
Mr. Anderson.
Judge, we have a PowerPoint. We sent it over to both the court and defense counsel.
If you're just now tuning into Live Now, I want to briefly explain they are discussing potential evidence. Right now, they're discussing alleged sexual abuse by doctors to Maya. I'm going to change this banner out to say viewer discretion advised in case you're watching with your family or loved ones so that you understand some of the things that you might hear or see could be difficult to watch.
You're talking about?
Sure.
Judge, I would point out this is for the second witness. I mentioned that in case you want to do it there.
But Dr. Chopra's the second witness, right?
Yes, he's coming right up.
And the first witness is quick-ish?
Yeah, I hope so. Rachel DeYoung, who's a physical therapist. Page? You can show him the court. Go to the third page, signs and symptoms of CRPS. Or the next page. The court
Why are we doing a PowerPoint in questioning?
Because it allows the jury in a case where the timing and the particular topic raised are important to make clear so that the jury understands the different parts of the testimony and they can read as well as hear what's going on. And so it is simply an aid in a complex case involving complex medical terminology so that they can better understand what's being talked about up there. I cannot see any prejudice to them, the other side, because, again, they've been given this, and he's going to testify virtually identically to this. And so that is the purpose, in our understanding, Judge, of a demonstrative aid, is to assist the jury.
Mr. Shapiro.
Yeah. My objection is not, there are some pictures in there that could be demonstrative aids. My objection is the language. I mean, the first page is him and his credentials, and then he basically is just writing out his testimony. He's welcome to testify to this. The words are not demonstrative aids. We object to the wording in it. If there's a picture that they want to lay a predicate on a demonstrative aid, they're welcome to. But I object to all the language of it.
Here's my thought. Before technology, the old chalkboard,
right.
People would, during the witness would say something and the lawyer would write it on the chalkboard. That concept doesn't offend me. The concern I have is you have language already written out and the witness hasn't said these things yet. So I don't care if you want to use, as he's testifying, you write out something that is displayed to the jury, but I don't think it's appropriate to have his testimony written ahead of time and then he just reads off the PowerPoint slide.
He has a great deal more to say on each one of these topics, Judge, that he prepared this, not me. So this is not a situation where counsel is coming up with directions for the witness to testify. These are simply points to remind the witness and to orient the jury. And the other thing I would remind the court is, if there's any doubt in the court's mind, we deserve a little bit of leeway because on opening statements, they were allowed to give, I grant you there's some difference between opening statement and a witness. However, they were allowed to use a demonstrative aid that had pure argument in it with graphs overlapping and statistics and things like that. That's not appropriate for opening. We objected at that time. The court overruled it. So in our point of view, if in the future we can't use demonstrative aids like this with witnesses, fine. But we spent a whole lot of time with this one.
I am, again, when the witness says something, if you want to write it down on a technology and broadcast, that's fine, but it's not appropriate to broadcast what he's going to say before he says it. I don't know how else to explain it.
Then is it appropriate, because my handwriting is so poor and it will take forever to write these things up there, for the witness
The gentleman behind you, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting your name.
Dan Reyes.
Mr. Rice. If he, I'm sure, can type, and I'm sure that his typing skills are sufficient that the jury will be able to read it, if that's the way you want to go.
We can do it that way.
If you want to use the overhead projector and handwrite it, you can do that as well, if you want to, but you can't broadcast this testimony and then have him testify from it.
What I was hoping to do is have him testify and then bring it up.
If he has testified to it, that's fine. But you can't broadcast it before he's testified.
Agreed, Judge. Agreed. We'll stay on this last slide before he finishes that area. And then we'll bring it up. If they have an objection, they can make it.
Okay, we're at 9 o'clock and I see Mr. Altenburn trying to get my attention as well.
I'll be very, very brief. On the motion in limine yesterday about the 2015 material, Mr. Anderson promised he wouldn't bring it up, and I appreciate that. It occurred to me when I realized that Dr. Chopra was the witness that if we're not giving curative instruction to the jury, that maybe a doctor that wants to talk about the 2015 to 2016 period needs to be clear that you're not going to volunteer information that's standard of care or criticism of the doctors in the period between 2015 and October 2016.
As it is right now, I think we're okay waiting a day. If it starts to look like that's what's happening, then I'm sure someone's going to stand up and object, and then we can possibly write a curative at that point in time.
Thank you.
But I'm taking Mr. Anderson at his word that that's not going to happen.
My questions will not be addressed to that period, other than obviously in predicate for 2016.
Okay. Anything else before we bring in the jury?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor. Let's bring in the jury. Good morning. Good morning. Everyone, please be seated. Members of the jury, I want to confirm, while you were away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation. You received no information. Is that all correct? Correct. Okay. Was there a...
No, I'm good.
Okay. I'm also going... I understand. I'm going to now ask you what will become standard questions as well. I want to ask you, have anyone approached any of you about this case at any time since you become a member of the jury? Has anyone... Okay. And have any of you seen any media reporting concerning this case since you've become a juror? Okay, thank you very much. Those will become standard questions during the days. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Whitney, who's Mr. Anderson?
Rachel Dion, plaintiff calls Rachel Dion.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Good morning. Mr. Anderson.
Please state your name for the record.
Rachel Dion,
And where do you live, Ms. Dion?
Venice, Florida.
And have you been called here as one of the physical therapists that worked with Maya Kowalski both before and after her visit to Johns Hopkins from October of 2016 to January of 2017?
Yes.
And I want the jury to know a little bit about you. Are you from here?
Yes, from here. I've lived here about 30 years.
And where'd you go to school?
I went to Florida Gulf Coast University for my bachelor's and then Kaiser University for the physical therapist assistant license.
And what did you study? What was that for the physical therapy, or was there other?
I studied for my bachelor's. I have it in exercise science. I did 4 years with that. And then Kaiser was just focused solely on the physical therapy license.
Okay. And then when were you first licensed?
July 2016.
And incidentally, was that one of the first days that you saw Maya Kowalski?
Yes.
And so you have been then a physical therapist for some 7 years. Is that right?
Correct.
And in your career, have you had pediatric patients from time to time?
When I was a student, we worked with some pediatric, yes.
As your profession progressed, did there come a time then that you were working more with older people?
Yes, yeah, being the demographic in the Venice and Sarasota County area, it gets a little older.
Okay. All right. And through the course of this, have you continued to keep yourself apprised of any innovations and new techniques, and, for lack of a better term, the latest news in physical therapy techniques?
Yes, actually now this is the year we need to renew our license, so we're in continuing education courses now. But yes, I do those every 2 years.
Okay. And so where do you work?
I work for a home health care company called Patients First Home Care.
Okay, and how long have you worked for them?
It just opened up, so under a year.
Okay. And then prior to that, where did you work?
I worked at Aviana. It used to be Doctor's Choice Home Health Care, and then before that was Agility Physical Therapy.
All right. And how long did you work at Agility Physical Therapy?
I did many positions before I started working as a licensed therapist there, so the time blends. But I think as a physical therapist, I worked for a year.
Had you had a number of pediatric patients, pain patients, or, well, physical therapy patients prior to Maya Kowalski?
At Agility, we got a lot of students in soccer injuries, so I was used to working with children.
Right. And in working with children, how important is it from your experience that they trust the physical therapist?
I see a lot of when therapists interact and, go by their emotions and not be too aggressive too quickly, that they respond better.
And so is the point then to make sure that the patient trusts you and knows you're not going to hurt them?
Exactly.
And have you found that that approach generally brings better results with the patients?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. So the first time, and I think we can bring up, that's the last appointment. Where's my first appointment? All right, can we bring up then Joint Exhibit 1028-0023? And for the record, this is an Agility Physical Therapy and Sports Performance daily note billing sheet for July 29th, 2016, the day you got your license, I guess.
The other day after.
All right. So this is going to go back to the jury. This is in evidence, Your Honor. This will go back to the jury, but I wanted to take you through a few of these so that the jury had the breadth of what we were doing. Can you explain a little bit about these different areas here on the first and second page and what they mean?
Okay, so we have the assessment, which is basically how the patient is presenting, what they're feeling, how we're viewing their ability to stand, their strength. So we're looking at also her range of motion, what can be performed with pain, without pain, if there are any deficits in her strength and range of motion, and what we need to focus on first. And those would be,
If you're just now tuning in to Live Now from Fox, you are watching Day 5 of the Take Care of Maya trial, live, raw, and unfiltered out in Venice, Florida. Witness testimony underway. A few facts about this trial. It dates back to 2016, where 10-year-old Maya went to the hospital for extreme pain. The hospital held Maya for 3 months as they did suspect child abuse. And then unfortunately, after 87 days of being separated from her daughter, Maya's mother took her own life, which is actually the crux of this entire proceeding. I'm Jeanne Francine, the time 9:11 on the East Coast, 6:11 on the West Coast. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for waking up with me here on Live Now from Fox. It's Thursday, September 28th, so Friday Eve. If you don't work on the weekend, one more day and then you are free and able to relax. Let's go ahead and take our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour, and when we come back, getting right back into your live events and top stories. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's get into some of our top stories of the day. U.S. House Oversight Committee reportedly aiming to hold the first impeachment inquiry hearing into President Joe Biden today. Joining us this morning is legal analyst as well as the attorney and managing partner at LiveNOW. Andrew Lieb, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. First question, how do we get to this point for an impeachment inquiry hearing for President Joe Biden? A lot to say there. I can't even say that 3 times fast, I don't think.
Jeanne, we're going to learn that today, as promised by the Oversight Committee Chairman, James Comer. James Comer did a little speech yesterday, and he's going to tell us about these 4 witnesses we're having today. 2 of them law professors, one on the Republican side, Jonathan Turley, and then we have Gerhardt on the Democratic side that are going to explain exactly the question you, I, and the American people have. What is the impeachment inquiry? What does that mean? Then the Republicans also have 2 witnesses. We have one witness who's an assistant attorney general from the Bush administration, from the Justice Department's tax department. And then we also have a consultant, a forensic accountant that's coming in, Jeanne, and they're going to lay out the roadmap for what this is about. But in simple terms, an impeachment inquiry is not an impeachment. And an impeachment is not a trial in the Senate. This is only the first step. This is an investigation with subpoena power. That's it. It's starting with oversight today. James Comer is going to bring the floor. He's got the gavel. Let's see what they got, Jeanne.
And Andrew, this isn't the first time a sitting president has faced this from the House, but we know that the Senate chose not to follow through with this. Do you see this starting to be a pattern with sitting presidents? We know Clinton faced it, former President Donald Trump, and now President Joe Biden.
It certainly feels like a pattern, but I believe we're here for different reasons for each of them. Just to think about how laughable the Clinton one is today when we're in today's politics with what Donald Trump has. He's lost a sexual assault case already. And Clinton got for what the word is means. Remember, like he got into this whole thing about what sex is and what he's doing. And so the Clinton one is just, it brings us back to my childhood. And we go back and we go, wow, I can't believe that was even a political scandal. These days, it's a nothing burger. But when it comes to what we just went through with Trump, what is going on with Biden, it's feeling much more regular. That being said, we have to separate the instances, separate what's going on. Today's, according to James Comer, who's in charge of the House, the oversight chair, is about to learn about President Joe Biden's knowledge of and his role in his family's business and international business practice. Let's find out what his role is. And here's the real question. Not. Did he know anything? Not. Did Hunter do anything bad? Not. Was Biden president or vice president? Nope. The question is, did he do malfeasance? Did he do something wrong? Did he use the levers of government to influence? Did they peddle influence? And was it him doing it in a quid pro quo, something for something to financially benefit themselves? That tie, that linkage, that's the key. And unfortunately for James Comer, he has a formidable opponent in Jamie Raskin, who's the Democrat ranking member. And Jamie Raskin is prepared to tear them apart and show that linkage is missing. But you never know until the evidence is before you. And perhaps James Comer is going to come with a smoking gun today, and we're all going to say impeachment is necessary. Let's find out, Jeanne.
You raise a great point, as always, Andrew. I mean, Hunter Biden facing his own instances, and now his father facing his. Hopefully they don't get misconstrued, because as you always say, let justice happen and let the proceedings happen.
You said it right. It's not your fault if your son does bad things when it's an adult son. It's not your fault when you're associated with someone that's a bad dude. Hunter Biden was a drug addict. He's a bad dude. He's getting charged with felony gun possession. That doesn't make Joe Biden culpable. Now, a lot of people like to point to a lot of things, but Smith, I don't know if you know Smith on Ways and Means. Smith presented 700 pieces of evidence that Ways and Means released yesterday. He's the Republican on Ways and Means. And he submitted all this evidence yesterday, and we heard about how they're going to get him. They're going to go after Joe Biden. They're going to show corruption. I'm just telling you that this is a terrible segue into this oversight impeachment inquiry. Why? Because NBC reporter Noble points out last night he makes Smith stumble. You got to watch this clip. If you haven't seen this clip, he questions him and he goes, I don't understand why this WhatsApp message is relevant since Biden wasn't vice president, Biden wasn't president, and Biden wasn't even running for office. So how could that be showing peddling influence when they're talking about Hunter peddling his family's brand? Again, the issue is that they don't have that quid pro quo they've shown us yet. Now, things smell. There is smoke. And there's nothing wrong with the impeachment inquiry. But we need to show that Joe Biden himself benefited and peddled influence, used malfeasance, his office in the government, to do wrong. It can't be when he wasn't in office. It doesn't matter that Hunter Biden lived at his house and used it as a beneficial address on a wire. What matters is, did Joe Biden peddle influence in exchange for benefiting himself and his family? I need to see that. We haven't seen it yet. But again, they have 4 witnesses today. Let's see what James Comer got tonight.
Andrew, this impeachment inquiry hearing expected to start at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Of course, we'll be bringing that to the viewers live, raw, and unfiltered. For those that will be watching something like this for the first time, what are some key things they need to be watching out for as they watch everything unfold?
There's 2 key things I want them to watch out for. One is procedure and one is substance. The first one is when you're watching something live, raw, and unfiltered, you have the ability to see exactly what we're saying without any spin going on. So what is going on here? It's questioning, it's a hearing, it's exactly what we've been saying for the last number of months in investigating Hunter and Joe and everything else. What's the difference then? The difference is the power. Oversight, Ways and Means, judiciary, they now have the power to subpoena. They can compel witnesses to give evidence. That's called a subpoena ducis tecum. Give them evidence, documents. They can compel them to testify. So people that were reluctant and didn't want to do things before now have requirement to go forward. The first thing to watch is procedure. How does this go? The second thing, and we've now hammered it home, and I want to hammer it home again, it's not whether Hunter is a bad guy. He's a bad guy. It's not whether Hunter peddled his father being a former vice president. It's not even whether Hunter peddled his father being a president. It's whether Joe Biden undersold, sold out our country, made decisions, used the wheels of governments wrongly, that's called malfeasance, to benefit himself and his family. If so, we should then get a vote for impeachment in the House and bring it to a trial in the Senate. If not, this has been a complete waste of time. And as I said before, Jamie Raskin, one of the best litigators out there, you may like him, you may not like him, but the guy is a litigator through and through, is going to tear this apart. So for the Republicans, I really hope James Comer got the goods. Yesterday, Smith really didn't do a good showing. Hopefully, Comer takes the baton, does it well. Let's watch for substance. Let's key in on that key point. It's a very yes-no question. Did Joe Biden use the wheels of governance in benefiting his family at the expense of the United States? If yes, impeachment. If no, waste of time, Janae.
All right, Andrew Lieb, attorney and managing partner at Lieb at Law. Always a pleasure having you here on Live Now from Fox. Is there anything else you'd like to add about what people will see live, raw, and unfiltered today around 10 o'clock Eastern time?
Watch it. Watch it. You got to watch it. We got to make our own decisions. I could go on Twitter this morning, or X or whatever he's calling it now, and I could read people that are in my echo chamber, and I could believe everything they say. I could believe this is all a witch hunt. This is ridiculous. This is a waste of time. This is Republicans spinning, going after the Democrats. I could believe that there's nothing here. This is a nothing burger. I could believe the Biden crime family, terrible, terrible people. We all know something's wrong. Most guilty family in history. But why believe any of that when you can watch something live, raw, and unfiltered and make your own decision? Why do we have to be following someone else? Watch the evidence. Look for the quid pro quo. If you see it, then we should get rid of them. If you don't see it, then we should move on and deal with other things that matter in our country, not this nonsense and political back and forth. Only the evidence can tell the answer, not you, me, or anyone else. Thanks so much.
All right, Andrew, thank you again for joining us here on Live Now from Fox, and I'm sure we'll be checking in with you later in the day to get some post-analysis.
Thank you.
All right. The time now 9:24 on the East Coast, 6:24 on the West Coast. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's go to our second 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, you all already know, getting right back into your live events, top stories, and headlines. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine. Let's head back out live, raw, and unfiltered to the Take Care of Maya trial. Witness testimony underway. It's day 5 of that trial as the family of Maya Kowalski is suing Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital for the alleged maltreatment of Maya, and they're ultimately saying that that maltreatment and separation from her child led to her mother taking her own life. Let's listen in now, live, raw, and unfiltered.
All right, and so I'm looking for the, over the course of the rest of the year, did you see Maya? Did you see her, when was the first time you saw her, if you recall?
When she came back after after she was in the hospital. Okay,
and I have a feeling there's one before this, I'm sure someone will point it out, but I'd like to take you to Joint Exhibit 1028-0093, which for the record is that billing sheet 01, so January 17th, 2017. Let the record reflect that Maya was discharged from the hospital on January 14th, 2017, approximately, 3 or 4 days before. So this is your first time seeing her back?
Yes, and this will show just how motivated she was. You know, a lot of us would have probably wanted to take a lot more time off, but she was in there days after everything she went through.
Threw herself into it.
Absolutely, she's very committed.
But tell the jury about the difference in physical condition as you saw it from a physical therapist's point of view from the last time you saw her before she went into Johns Hopkins and as she literally had just come out of Johns Hopkins.
She seemed much, much thinner than the last time I saw her, especially her legs. There was a couple abrasions on the thighs. Her pain was through the roof, very distant, very difficult to communicate with at the beginning because she doesn't, she's fearful of opening up, fearful of the consequences.
And so Did you notice whether her dystonia had returned or not?
Yes, it was worse. Although the stretching that we did for her calf muscles, Achilles, the heel cord, tightened up again, maybe even a little bit worse than when we first started.
Okay. And so on the pain scale there, I see partly down, she's describing worst 8, best 5, current 7. Orient the jury to what that means.
So that's the pain scale. 0 out of 10 means you have no pain at all. 10 means that you can punch your injury and it won't hurt any more than it already is. So 8 out of 10 is very high.
So at 5, was this a good day for Maya?
I would say that was about medium.
Okay. All right. And what else can you tell us about Maya's upper body? Did she need assistance to stay upright in the wheelchair?
Yes, she was slouched to the side, so you need pillows to support, otherwise you risk, skin breakdown. So Jack was very good about making sure she was turning, that she was offloading those bony prominences on the side of the wheelchair, because she was also very, very skinny, much skinnier than when I last saw her.
How about the circumference of her thighs and then calves? Had it increased or decreased?
Decreased.
Significantly or just a little bit?
I would say moderately.
All right. And in terms of range of motion, did you find that she had diminished in terms of her ability to move?
Yes. Before I saw her, she had deltoids that we would all be jealous of. Her shoulder muscles were so defined and she was so strong. She could walk on her hands probably if she wanted to. But when I saw her again, everything was very, very weak, no tone left in the shoulders.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the ability, for instance, to raise her arms, was that increased or decreased as she came out of Johns Hopkins?
Decreased range of motion.
And did you go through all of the standard evaluations as a physical therapist to assess her state at that point?
Yes, Alan did that.
And so you set about, I guess here, a chance to bring her back, if you will. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so, again, what did you notice about Maya in terms of her tolerance of the pain she was in? Did she reject a lot of exercises, or did she just try to gut it through best she could?
She would participate in everything I asked her to. The only reason if I would change something is if she was grimacing pretty significantly and that grimace wasn't going away. I would maybe change her body position, maybe change the exercise, but still work the same muscles. And so it would still give her some strengthening without excruciating pain.
So throughout the therapy, you were constantly looking for signs she was in pain and would then adjust?
Yes, if it were appropriate pain, or if it were pain that she's not going to want to ever come back to see me again.
All right, and you said before that she had some, and I forget the term you used, but the jury's interested to know, did you note any lesions on her?
Yes.
And where were they?
The upper thigh.
And what did they look like?
They were small, round, a little red, irritated.
They look angry?
Yeah.
All right.
If you're just now tuning into Live Now from Fox, you are listening live, raw, and unfiltered to witness testimony out there in Venice, Florida for the Take Care of Maya trial. It is day 5. A little perspective of this trial. Back in 2016, 10-year-old Maya went to the hospital for what her family said was extreme pain. The hospital held Maya for 3 months, suspecting child abuse. And unfortunately, after 87 days of being separated, Maya's mother took her own life. There's actually a lot to be understood with this case. So joining me live, raw, and unfiltered this morning on your screen, Lawrence Hutman. He's an attorney with Farah and Farah. Lawrence, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Good morning.
Yes, so one aspect of this Take Care of Maya trial is medical malpractice. That's a word we don't hear every day. Could you briefly explain what medical malpractice is?
Sure. Here in the state of Florida, where this case is brought, it's basically whether the caregivers complied with a standard of care. So if you look at kind of a bright line in the community, did they fall below it? Did they meet it, or did they exceed it?
Actually, that trial actually underway on your screen on that left box. That's the witness that is speaking. You've actually been seeing this trial as it's unfolded. Briefly tell us, how does medical malpractice relate to this trial? We know that the family is suing the hospital.
Yes, and it's a little unique for a medical malpractice case because obviously the damages, the loss of Beata Kowalski are what the primary damages alleged here, but the treatment of Maya is really what's at question here, whether the treatment, the diagnosis, and the treatment that was being provided to her met the standard of care. And here we've got an abuse allegation because of the diagnosis or the information to lead to a claim that there was Munchausen's by proxy, which would lend itself to saying, hey, she doesn't really have complex regional pain syndrome, or the treating providers outside the hospital and the treatment regimen she had undergone or that she was hoping to continue through All Children's are not appropriate for this particular patient. So there's a lot of outside information that goes into making that determination. Were they meeting the standard of care, and were they in fact treating her for CRPS? If they were, to say she has Munchausen's by proxy and that she doesn't have CRPS, they're kind of mutually exclusive. So that's the unique issue in this particular case, which is very different than most medical malpractice cases.
Great points there, Mr. Hutman. I mean, a few days ago, we actually saw that the family attorney brought up a witness who was the family doctor, and he was saying that some of the things that the hospital was saying Maya was experiencing, he never saw Maya deal with that as a child. I guess as we continue to watch this trial in the coming days, what are some key things that the viewers need to be listening to and watching? Even the attorneys, what are some things we can expect for them to say to kind of prove that medical malpractice happened with this hospital and the other entities?
I think you have to look objectively at the evidence to determine whether or not there was questioning of the diagnosis. Doctors can always question a diagnosis, but if you discard a diagnosis that she apparently came in with, if you're keying in on some prior treating doctors, how do you disregard that, particularly if those doctors are cooperative with All Children's and are communicating with them and sending their records and providing that? I think doctors can reasonably differ on opinions of treatment, but at the core is, did she have CRPS, or was this in fact something where it merits that there's, child abuse, that there was this Munchausen's by proxy by the mom?
All right, Lawrence Hutman, an attorney with Fair and Fair, thank you so much for joining me here on Live Now from Fox this morning. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this case as it relates to medical malpractice?
Just that this case involves a lot of different elements in terms of the billing aspects that, could sometimes come in terms of evidence as to what they billed for and other issues that I think are important just to get a perspective of how the hospital treated this particular patient.
All right, Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure it won't be the last time this trial is ever flowing. We will be checking back in with you soon. Again, that trial underway on that left box on your screen. Let's continue to listen in now, live, raw, and unfiltered.
And I believe, if you have reviewed them, that in the records for ability fitness, those exercises are set out.
Yes.
I'm trying to find them, but we'll let the jury look through them. Now, I noticed one other thing, and that is that from time to time you had something called a patient outcome. And if we could show an example, this one's fairly early, this is before Johns Hopkins, 1028-0041. And then, of course, it would be 0042. All right. So the jury's back there and they want to look through this and educate themselves further on how Maya was before and after. Take them through what this is for.
So this is for activities of daily living. How is she able to accomplish those things, if at all? So we would rate that based on a number.
Got it. A 1 to 10 scale again.
I'm sorry?
1 to 10 scale.
Yes.
Okay. And then, now this was obviously before, on August 17th of 2016, but at that time, her pain level was still an 8 on certain days.
Yes.
And she had like moderate difficulty lifting an object like a bag of groceries.
Yes.
But overall, did she appear to be doing better despite her scoring there?
Yes.
Do the patients become more, when they're filling one of these out, do they tend to be more pessimistic than what you're hearing, or optimistic? How would you describe it?
I would say it's per patient.
If you're just now tuning into Live Now from Fox, you are watching Day 5 of the Take Care of Maya trial, live, raw, and unfiltered out there in Venice, Florida. Witness testimony underway, and we just heard from an attorney. He gave us the medical malpractice side of this trial. Very interesting perspective. This trial centered around Maya Kowalski, who's now on your screen. This is all because of alleged maltreatment from the hospital, and they're also saying that all of this led to her mother taking her own life. I'm Jeanne Francine. The time 9:40 on the East Coast, 6:40 on the West Coast. Let's go to a quick 2-minute commercial break, and when we come back, getting right back into your top stories and headlines. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine, getting back into your top stories this morning. Joining us is Robert Ray with Fox Weather. We are talking about remembering the impacts 1 year later of Hurricane Ian. And Robert, behind you, we see some of the debris left behind because of that.
Yeah, good morning to you. All of this debris here is from a hotel that was badly damaged a year ago when Hurricane Ian came in, and they've recently demolished it. And now you see the fence with all of the piles of the belongings of that business. And many people are reeling and just fighting so many different insurance battles, and the ability to try to make a comeback is very slow and difficult. Well, yesterday I spent most of the morning and afternoon traversing Fort Myers Beach, looking at the many places that a year ago I and team reported in, how it looked then and now. Let's see. On the evening of September 27th, as the outer bands of Hurricane Ian was making its way into Fort Myers Beach, I had a sense that this could be historic. Wow, okay. Stand by, guys. After a full morning and day of Hurricane Ian battering the region, we ended up here. My photographer Rick and I in downtown Fort Myers. In fact, look at this. This exact location where I'm walking right now was taking storm surge from the river right adjacent to the downtown area, making it difficult to report. The power of the storm just being unleashed. The energy, and it's nowhere near over as it will continue up the peninsula. And I can tell you, my photographer, I watched him get lifted 2 feet in the air from a wind gust and dropped back down. He was fine, but it was a scary, scary moment. On the morning of September 29th, after Ian ravaged the area and killed many, we came to this location, and this may not look like much right now with the fence and the harbor here on the river, but look at it on September 29th. Piles of vessels just thrown around as if they were tinker toys. The smell of fuel, oil, the sounds of alarms from the boats, a scene that really I will never forget. This area of Fort Myers Beach was inundated with up to 15 feet of storm surge, and this is the Times Square area. Take a look at the video that you're seeing, and this is the destruction the day and 2 days after, and the piles of rubble and the one path that was cleared to walk through here, and you see it. And now I'm walking that exact same path here in Times Square, Fort Myers Beach, and you see some of the areas they're trying to restore and get back on their feet. Food trucks right there, heavy moving machinery still, but yet the pier, the famous Fort Myers Beach pier, still ripped apart in shreds as buildings, just the slates, exist.
And it's sad because we grew up here, and then all the things that we knew when we grew up here are all gone. So, but it's coming back slowly, and they kept saying it was going to be a year, and it's a year, and things are not back to normal. And then I feel bad for the people who never evacuated and lost their lives here. So, and I knew a couple of them, so that's really sad.
This debris will get removed eventually. Buildings will go up, whether it be from large developers or ma and pa small businesses. But the main issue a year later right now, besides the mourning still of the over 150 people that lost their lives, is the fact that many of the middle class that built Fort Myers Beach over the course of the past 60, 70, 80 years, many of the homes that are destroyed will not be able to be rebuilt because unfortunately it's about cash at this point, and many people are still waiting on insurance. Many people didn't get what they thought they would get from insurance, and there's new building codes, there is red tape and bureaucracy all around Southwest Florida in order to rebuild this plot of paradise that is worth literally a fortune to huge companies that can come in and start a new tourism industry. But what does that mean for the people that made this barrier island? Well, it means a lot of sadness and loss even in the years ahead, as their generations of families will not be able to rebuild here because of the insurance and all the red tape. It's complicated, it's sad, and there are moments of hope. Don't get me wrong, there are businesses that are rebuilding, small businesses. But overall, this process is going to take years ahead. Back to you.
Robert, truly a compelling story there. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm glad that you mentioned, despite all of this tragedy, they still have hope and even a sense of community, as even a year later, they try to rebuild what they can.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Robert. The time now 9:49 on the East Coast, 6:49 on the West Coast. I'm Jeanne Francine. It's been my pleasure to be here with you all for these past 2 hours, giving you all of your live events, top stories, and headlines. We must go to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but when we come back, my colleague Josh Breslow will be joining you, giving you all of your top stories and headlines. You're watching Live Now from Fox.